Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our April 15th, 2020 Planning Board meeting. I'm going to start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I thought in these times, maybe we could just have not necessarily a moment of silence, because that's usually reserved for people, so we can have a moment of silence for this past in this dark time, but also a moment of appreciation for all the people that are out there working so hard and keeping us going. So I'll just have silence for a minute or two, please. All right, Barbara, would you please do the roll call for us?
Chairman Curry,
Here.
Ms. Gannon,
Here.
Mr. Vino. Nancy?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Goldenberg,
Present.
Mr. McNamara. Dennis, are you there?
Might have lost him when you shared the screen.
Okay. Well, Mr. Prince
Here.
and Mr. Zaberto.
I'm here.
Thank you. First on our agenda is some draft minutes for some different meetings. The first one for your consideration approval is from December 7th, 2019. Does anybody have any additions, corrections they'd like to make? If not, then I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from December 11th, 2019 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. All in favor? Thank you. Our second minutes is from January 8th, 2020. Anybody have any comments on those? Somebody like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. And our last is from the meeting of February 12th, 2020. Any additions or corrections anybody like to make on those? Then I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes from February 12th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And Barbara, thank you very much. Incredible job.
Sorry they're so late.
Thank you. First on our agenda is a time extension for the point. And we have letters from Tim Allen for Bibbo Associates and also from our recommending that we grant this 7th 90-day time extension for Granite Point subdivision. It's a regrant of final subdivision approval, wetland, steep slopes, tree preservation, and stormwater management, and erosion and sediment control permits. This is as per resolution 2017-10, and the dates for the regrant of the approval was from April 28th, 20 up to and including July 27th, 2020. Does any of the members have any comments on that, or would somebody like to make a motion to approve these?
Right, before you make a motion, John, may I say something? John?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to point out in the Bibbo request that some of the dates were not correct. And typically I get back to them and tell them that they need to revise this. In this case, given all the things that were going on the day that I received it and closing down, et cetera, to start working at home, that didn't happen. So I apologize to the board, but in the future, I will ask Bibbo Associates to please be careful. You'll note that on top it says March 17th, 2019, which in fact should probably say the 20th. And later in the letter, it says that they wanted to be placed on the January 8th, 2020 agenda. I think, of course, that happened because they used a template and probably forgot to change the date. But my comments and the dates that you just read for their 11th renewal and extension are correct. So you may go ahead with the board.
Okay. Thank you. So what I just said would be my motion. And for the records, the property is located on the east side of Route 118 and 202, adjacent to the Amawalk Reservoir, and it's located in the R40 zoning district for the development of 23 lots in a cluster subdivision. So I make that motion for the 11th 90-day time extension. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Rich, want me to wait and go to the other public hearing? What do you want to do?
No, I think Peter's on. Peter, you want to go or do you want to wait for Mark? Mute Peter.
Is he here?
Peter's here, I think. Peter,
Go
I'm sorry.
ahead.
Peter, your audio is not on, Peter. Bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you can turn on your audio.
He's not showing muted, which could mean his mic on his laptop isn't turned on.
Well, I think he joined the meeting with audio, did not join with video. I think he's got to go to the bottom left-hand corner and it'll say join with video.
Peter, what you can do is you can end meeting, then and click the link again, rejoin, and then make sure you do it with computer audio to rejoin, please.
That's what I did.
So John, I don't know if you want to move forward while we wait for Peter.
All right. Want me to know the next agenda item, or you want me to go with this?
If you want to give Peter a couple of seconds, that would see how quick he can rejoin, but if it takes any longer, maybe you want to move on.
All right, well, for the record, this is the public hearing on the Bluestone Peak Academy, which is the new private school in Somers. It's an application for the amended site plan approval, stormwater management and erosion and sediment control, wetland and water course protection, steep slopes protection, and tree preservation and fundraising approval, the active reuse of the former Yam property. The property is located at 294 Route 100 on the eastern side of Route 100, and it's in the OB 100 zoning district. We're in receipt of some letters, one from planner, also from our consulting engineers, from FP Clark, and an application and a letter from our from the law firm representing Bluestone. If the applicant or Rich, do you want to give a little brief review of this before I open the public hearing?
Peter jumped on. I think he just needs to unmute his mic now.
Okay.
Say something, Peter.
Can you hear me now or no?
There you go. Now we-
Yes. Oh, good. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Peter Wise on behalf of 294 Route 100 LLC. For the record, with me tonight, as you can see, are Rich Williams of Insight Engineering. I think I saw Eric Kyer down there. He is from Garment Davidson, the project architect. My partner, Mark Weingarten, will probably pop in at some point. This is a continuation of a public hearing that we opened February 12th, if I remember correctly. The project is well known to you. It's been described many, many times. I'm happy to give you a brief summary if you like. If not, then I will say that we last submitted responses to comments to you back on April 1, and Rich can go through the whatever changes there have been to the plan between February and now. So whatever you'd like, I'm happy to accommodate.
Would you just give it any updates that you want, and then we'll hear from our town planner and our consulting engineer. That's okay.
Sure. So just to kind of start at the outside and work our way in, and for the benefit of the public, there's two processes happening simultaneously and in parallel. The town board is currently looking at seeker as they're the lead agency, and they're also looking at zoning amendments and a master plan modification. Tonight, this public hearing is before your planning board specifically for the subdivision of the 723.1 acre property into 4 lots and the phase 1 site plan approval. We are proposing to an adaptive reuse of the former IBM campus into a for-profit boarding private school for grades 9 through 12. I'll briefly, John, if you want, I can share my screen out to the public. We'll do a quick run through of the project.
Sure.
And then I'll finish up with the changes.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So everybody should be able to see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay. So what you're looking at is an aerial image of the IBM campus. It is the existing property line is represented by the blue line. Again, it's 723.1 acres. You have Interstate 684 on the top of the page, the Muscoot Reservoir with the town line between Somers and Bedford, Route 116, US Route 202, Town Center at Somers, 3100, Kennedy High School towards our southern property line, and Lake Purdy's. There's 3 entrances into the existing campus, one off of 116, one off of Route 100, and one off of 138. Tonight, for this public hearing, we're here for the subdivision and the phase 1 site plan. We're proposing to subdivide this property into 4 parcels, primarily to create a lot for the school. Centrally in the site, you can see the existing campus. It's surrounded by a loop road, has a central services building and 4 office buildings, which are identical, although 2 are mirror images of each other. The school is proposing to reuse this campus and stay within the limits of the loop road. So what you can see in red are the proposed subdivision lines. The school parcel, which is lot 1, would be 344.9 acres. We would subdivide off the facilities yard. Contained in the facilities yard is the wastewater treatment plant, water storage tank, treatment facilities, centralized cooling system, things of that nature, so that they could service all the lots. And that leaves a residual northern and southern lot of 109.7 acres for the northern lot and 233 acres for the southern lot. There are no development plans for either of those lots at this point in time, as we have disclosed to the board several times. Moving forward, this is a blow-up of the existing campus within the loop road. Tonight, we're here for the phase 1 site plan. I'm going to quickly show all 3 phases for context, and then go into some detail on the phase 1 and some of the changes in our most recent submission. In phase 1, we are proposing to renovate existing central services building into administrative spaces, dining spaces, create a health center, fitness center, music spaces, center. And then we're going to renovate office buildings 3 and 4 into dormitory and academic space. As I go through each of these phases, you're going to see a general theme coming out, and that is IBM as a corporate headquarters needed to move a lot of people in and out of the office campus each day. We as a boarding school do not. So a large part of our redevelopment of the site was to actually eliminate pavement, reduce parking lots, and create athletic fields, which as a school are what we need. So starting at the northern portion of the site, we're going to take out one of the existing parking lots to create a series of baseball fields. This is our primary ball field. It is one of the fields we're proposing to light. We are going to be working counterclockwise. Phase 1, we're going to be constructing a field house, which will have an underground link connecting the field house to the existing buildings. We're going to do a series of landscape improvements to the existing entrance to the site. We're going to repurpose an existing parking lot into tennis courts. And we're going to remove existing parking lot in order to construct 2 multi-use fields and a softball field. All of the fields in phase 1 are going to be natural, not artificial turf fields. In phase 2, we're going to move into office building 2 and start renovating that building. In addition, we're going to remove one of the parking lots in order to construct another natural turf multi-use field, as well as an artificial turf track and field. This is the only artificial turf proposed for the school. There's also down here a connection that's being created to improve fire access per code as a result of OB2's renovation. In phase 3, we're going to renovate the last office building and remove a series of parking lots in order to create 3 natural grass multi-use fields. At the end of the day, there's going to be nearly a 20% reduction in impervious surfaces. There's 51.8 acres of impervious surface now and roughly 3,200 parking spaces. When we're done, there's going to be close to 1,000 and almost 10 acres less of pavement. Some of the benefits of that, obviously less stormwater runoff. In addition, and we provided calculations demonstrating there'll be a reduction in phosphorus, which is the pollutant concern in this watershed. You're going to have reduced heat island effect and also reduced salt application on the site, and by nearly 20% as a result of the loss of parking. What is in front of you, again, is now the phase 1 site plan, because that's really what we're here for tonight, the subdivision in phase 1. Just to get into some of the specifics on phase 1, we're going to reduce 3.5 acres of pavement, or roughly 465 parking spaces. We won't need all this parking, but we're going to reduce parking in stages or in phases, as I just showed you. So after phase 1, there'll still be 2,448 spaces. One of the recent things we added to this submission are tree removal plans, which are based on tree surveys. There are 355 trees to be removed in phase 1. A lot of them are existing trees that meet the definition of a significant tree, but are located in the islands of the existing parking areas and were part of the original landscape plans submitted. We do have some wetland disturbance in phase 1, mostly associated with removing one of the existing road down here and creating an infiltration basin. There is also some slight disturbance up in this portion of the site relative to grading in order to create the fields. We have provided wetland mitigation plans, which include things like plantings, establishing zones, chain link fencing to act as physical barriers, particularly around the athletic fields, and signage to indicate to students that these are environmentally sensitive areas. Phase 1 lighting. Most of the lighting is going to be associated with the tennis courts and the ball field. We are proposing this, the 2 baseball fields to be lit. When I think of ball field lighting, I usually think of Somerset. These are not those lights. These are new technology sports lighting, so they're LEDs. They're very focused. One of our colleagues in this meeting completed a project and mentioned it to the last meeting down at Horace Greeley is a good example if anyone wants to see the style and type of lighting, because it is very focused and has very good offset. As far as the tennis court lights, they're comparable in height to the existing parking lot lighting and will actually serve as less of an impact because they're now going to be full area cutoff lighting of equivalent height. As far as earthwork, we have provided an earthwork plan. At the last meeting, I told you we are revising the numbers. We've just started to finalize it, and in our next submission, we're going to update the grading on the baseball field. We adjusted its elevation by 1 foot, and that brought up the mass earthwork into balance for phase 1. With respect to sewer and water in phase 1, our average daily flow is 38,611 gallons a day. So we're operating within the existing permits for the water and wastewater facilities. And as far as stormwater goes, We have a 3.5 acre net reduction in impervious surfaces in phase 1. However, there's a difference between reducing impervious and new impervious. Even though we're eliminating more impervious surface than we're creating, the minute we put a new impervious surface on something that's currently on, we have to treat it in accordance with all the newest regulations, meaning green infrastructure, Chapter 10, which is enhanced phosphorus, and meet the requirements of the general permit. So as far as in phase 1, we have an infiltration system to address the new impervious surface for the field house. We have rain gardens constructed around 3 drone pads, one here, one over here, and one down here. The 3 drone pads are small, round asphalt areas, which are going to be used as part of the STEAM programming. Although there's a net reduction in impervious associated with these tennis courts, we do have new impervious surface. So we're providing an infiltration basin here. And in addition, when we relocate this road to eliminate this parking lot, we are going to have some new impervious surface. So we have an infiltration basin here. One of the new additions to the plan that we told you was coming was our health center is located in the central services building on a lower level. We've now added the proposed ambulance turnaround in order to access that. We have to, we do envision that to be porous pavement. However, we still do have to complete that stormwater testing with the town of New York City DEP. All other stormwater testing has been completed. As far as additions, since our submission, we did a walking path. We still do have the jogging trail for our track and field events, which follows the loop road and stays completely on the school district's property. However, there was a walking path proposed to get from the northern portion of our site to the hamlet. We did eliminate that as part of this submission. We have also added the tree removal plans that were requested, and we addressed a lot of the outstanding stormwater comments. So that being said, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from our town planner and our consulting engineer, if you don't mind, if you have any comments.
I just have a few, Joe, if you want me to go first.
Sure.
Okay. Just a couple of comments on my memo of April 9th that I'd like to bring to the attention at this time. You just mentioned that, Rich, that you were eliminating the proposed walking path to the hamlet. So my question is, we're going to have 1,800 students on this site, and the way that was previously conceived, it was going to end up somewhere at the intersection of 100 and 202 to get students into an intersection that was signalized and give them an opportunity to get into downtown in some type of walking mode. So my question is, why have you eliminated it? And how are you going to allow students to go from where they are to this nearby amenity when they're not going to be having, to take either, some kind of transit, but, the town is going to be concerned about any kind of pedestrian movement or bicycle movement that isn't controlled. So that's my question.
Rich, you want to take that or?
Sure.
Very simply, Saret, if I can just respond very simply, the walking trail would have required us to get access over property that we don't own. And at this point in time, we haven't been able to secure that access. So in terms of students, students will have to access other facilities in town by shuttle right now. That's our current plan. If it's sometime in the future we can gain control of necessary property for the walking trail, we'll come back to you and seek approval for that path.
Okay, I mean, this is something for the planning board to consider.
Did I understand, I have to ask, did I understand you correctly to say it'll be by shuttle?
Shuttle,
Okay,
yes,
I
we've
don't
always,
mean that's okay. I just can't imagine controlling 1,800 teenagers that way.
Yeah, that sounds like an increased inordinate amount of vehicular traffic that's going to come into the hamlet of Somers. And that's something that I would find concerning. What exactly, or whose property is it? Is it town-owned property? Is it state-owned property? Or is it privately owned property that right now would be?
privately owned property. Privately owned.
Has there been any attempt to try to contact those owners?
Yes,
Try to ask for an easement or some sort of an agreement?
yeah, the answer to that is yes. There have been some discussions. They haven't been fruitful thus far.
Okay.
Can I ask a question with regard to the shuttle? What are you planning? What kind of facilities or what kind of vehicles are you talking about, and how often would they be running?
You know, Mr. Prince, I don't think we know yet exactly what the shuttle system will be. I mean, we've always proposed some vehicular transportation between, let's say, town center and the school and other locations, including the train stations, but I don't think the details of that are known yet.
Okay.
Don't you have road frontage on Route 100?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Peter, don't you have road frontage on Route 100?
Joe, I'm sorry, you gotta have to speak a little bit.
Can I repeat that for Joe if you can hear? Can you hear me, Peter?
Now, Peter?
We do, Peter, I can grab this. We do have road frontage on Route 100, but it is not at a point along the state highway system where we could easily or safely get students across the street.
Right.
No, okay, I thought you on this side of the street, I thought that between the bank and the pharmacy parcel, I thought your property came down to Route 100 there.
We do, there is another property across the street that sits behind what was going to be the Emergency Operations Center.
No, that's not what I'm talking about, Rich. Maybe I'm wrong, but I could have sworn that there was property that was controlled by the former IBM that was between the pharmacy and Citibank.
There is. That was where we were coming down with the walking path. However, we can't get to the signalized intersection.
Rich and Peter, this is Eric. Mark is trying to get in right now and seems to not to be able to.
So Rich, one of the things that you might want to think about is coming down where you can, and you might have to build a piece of sidewalk to get it to the intersection, but that might be another option.
Joe, that's what Peter was talking about. In order to build that sidewalk and connect to the traffic light, we have to cross private property. There isn't sufficient right of way there. We investigated it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other member comments? Questions?
Let me just mention one other thing before we go on to Joe possibly. One of the things that I noted was in the tree removal plan that it appeared in several instances, such as west of the baseball field and north of the multi-use turf field, that there were large areas of trees that were being removed that appeared to be beyond the areas of disturbance. Am I correct about this, Rich? And if I am, why are these being removed?
You are correct, and that is, it has to do with fitting the fields in. The field footprints are slightly larger than the existing parking lots are, particularly on the multi-use fields. On the baseball fields, we are going beyond the parking lot.
Rich, you also, I believe, if I understood right, you said you were going to be removing trees that are in some of the parking lots that are going to be removed, I think, in phase 2 or 3. You're removing the trees now that are on some islands Is that true, and why?
We're only going to remove the trees necessary for phase one in phase one.
Right.
We have provided as part of seeker the full tree removal in all the phases. But as of right now, we're only proposing what's in phase one, and all 3 phases have some trees that are located in the existing parking lot islands that are necessary to be removed. For example, the tennis courts.
Okay,
Any other board members or questions? Or Joe, you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I'll just add is, the applicant, Rich did a nice job representing the progress of the work done on part of the project. I would say stormwater, basically comfortable with stormwater, just some really minor items to work through. I'm still waiting on information both for the secret and, of course, and by extension, the site plan around water and wastewater. Both the water supply, we've heard public meetings about water quality. So there's not only, the capacity issue, which Rich mentioned, but we've also asked some other items around quality as well. And relative to the the wastewater plant, they provided a memorandum about, the condition and the ability of that plant to be able to accommodate the phase one project. And there's some additional details that we've asked for on that. But, frankly, I think that the plan is pretty well developed for the public to comment, and I'm comfortable with us continuing to proceed. And I'm confident that Rich and I will work through the details around the remaining water and wastewater items.
Can I jump in, Joe?
Yeah.
Would you comment on the WIGS report?
I was going to ask the same thing, Nancy. Thank you.
So the watershed inspector general, that is really relative to the broader town board action. That is a secret comments. The watershed inspector general has a series of detailed comments, none of which were surprising to us.
Of course.
And I would, from the applicant's perspective, nothing was surprising either, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were relatively of memorandums that I've seen come out of the watershed inspector general's office. There's nothing there that I don't think Rich will be able to deal with. And
Okay.
I think really the discussion I think that we'll have to have probably as part of the secret action is, there may be questions on future phases that we don't have the developed details on, and I think we might have to, like we have in previous applications, open the door at future site plan review stages in order for the watershed inspector general to have an opportunity to comment on those specifics when they develop. But I think that's something we'll have to work through with the attorneys at the time when we're getting ready to take a secret action. But generally, there were no showstoppers in the watershed inspector general's report. And frankly, he concurred with one of the things that, maybe not the exact numbers, but just generally in concept towards the overall phosphorus reduction, which is not only positive for his review of this project, but frankly has positive benefits for the town. And we'll be working with Rich and the East of Hudson Watershed Corporation in order to leverage Rich's analysis into the town and the East of Hudson generating watershed credits for that. So I think Rich did a good job getting that the watershed inspector general kind of focused and guided in a way that we don't have comments coming from left field here. So nice job, Rich.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I think the comments were very tempered and very appropriate and mostly technical. And I think that, like Joe says, between Joe and Rich, they'll be able to work their way through all of them.
Well, that's good to hear.
If Joe is done,
Rich, I have just one question. Do you plan on irrigating the ball fields?
Yes. We don't have the details developed yet, and it'll most likely be done as a design build with a contractor.
And try to use like gray water or something?
We have looked at the potential for gray water. We have looked at the potential for stormwater. Final decisions haven't been made yet. we have included a allotment towards irrigation in the water report prepared by WSP.
Okay,
John, can I ask one further question?
sure.
Okay, just going back to the issue of the potential future connection, could you just give me an approximate length from the area that the applicant owns out onto Route 100 to the signalized intersection? What's that distance?
If you just bear with me, I have to look the number up. So in round numbers, it's probably close to 60 feet to the beginning of the driveway associated with the pharmacy. And then it would be about 100 feet in round numbers to the actual crosswalk itself.
And is it only one property owner that is involved in that piece that's missing?
I believe it is.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board member comments or Saret, do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Has,
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I'm asking Joe and Rich Williams both. I don't know which one. In lot 4, it mentions, and only I would come up with this, it mentions that located there is Hackalaya Bailey's kiln. And it gives a number. I don't know what the number stands for, but I hope that it's a number that you can use to specifically locate exactly where that kiln is. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yes. Actually, on that portion of the walking trail that we were just talking about that we've eliminated, just behind Somers Pharmacy and the bank, in the original EIS documents for IBM, it discovered that kiln.
Right, I knew it was IBM that discovered it, right?
We don't know exactly where it is. I personally haven't gone and looked for it.
I just want to know when we go to try to find it, where to start looking. That was all.
Yeah, it's, from my understanding, it's generally behind the Citibank building in that portion of the site.
That's good. Good enough. Go on with the meeting.
Rich, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but has, in order to have a conversation with the property owner that you're having problems with, would it be inappropriate to have the town supervisor get involved?
I would say probably not yet.
Yeah, probably not yet.
Okay,
I think that's
just a thought.
Okay, then, I think we'll
John,
move to the public hearing.
Except,
Any more
yeah,
comments?
John, I forgot that as I turn the page, that I have FP Clark's comments of April 10th. And I just wanted to alert the board to what Mike Galante, as the traffic engineer for this project, has identified. And that is that the applicant, and they have this memo, needs to prepare additional drawings for the site plan that deal with some of the traffic controls on the campus. So that is something that we'll still need to have produced for this.
Okay.
noted.
Any other board member comments?
John?
All right, then, before I open the public hearing, I just want to check with Barbara. Public notices have been put out as best they can, right?
Oh, yes, hold on one second. For Summers, for the school, the sign was
Yes.
posted on April 2nd. It was published in the Somers Record on April 2nd, and mailings went out on April 3rd.
Fine. Thank you very much.
John, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt you for a
Yep.
moment?
Sure.
I have 3 texts here, and I'm not sure at what point you want me to read them to the board.
Let's do it. Let's do it now. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on a moment. Pardon me. The first one says, how does the town plan to address future students leaving the campus, specifically adjacent to Lake Purdy's? The second one, they say no development is planned for the other 2 subdivisions at this time, but is there a legal agreement that no development can happen here? If not, how is this zoned and what are the possibilities for development? And the last one, will an MOU be drafted to outline who is responsible for what between the town and the school with respect to maintenance and policing of students? And that's it.
Thank you. Paul, do you have anything that you got in that you want to answer?
No, nobody's trying to get in right now.
Okay.
John, I still have that first email. Do you want
All
me
right.
to?
Then you want to read into the record?
Yes, this is from Anthony Falcone, 5 Parkway in Purdy's, resident for the past 14 years, board member of Lake Purdy's Property Association, and a licensed professional engineer. Comments are his own, not part of the association, and he's reviewed the whole thing and has a few questions. In general, optimistic about Bluestone Peak's redevelopment. 2, the site's loop road is delineation between the site's managed stormwater detention system and the watershed of Lake Purdy's. Although there appears to be no proposed work or land disturbance to the northeast of the loop road, neighbors have witnessed the previous owners dump significant amounts of yard waste into the outside wooded perimeter of the road and hence into the lake's watershed. Lake's water quality has been impaired by blue-green algae over a decade now, and the LPPOA spends over $2,500 annually on New York State DEC regulated algicide treatments to keep the lake safe for swimming. I asked Bluestone Peak Academy, I'm paraphrasing here, to keep this in mind going forward. Acknowledge that, and number 3, acknowledge that each of us has been a bored teenager at one point in our lives. Having said several hundred residents of bored teenagers is cause for some concern. LPPOA has been a victim of vandalization many times in the past. We don't have a perimeter fence. From time to time have recognized and asked non-members to leave the lake property because we are not a public facility. Although Bluestone Peak Academy claims it will manage the student populations coming and goings from campus, exactly who should be called and not if a member finds that errant students made their way through the woods and into the lake, i.e. on a hot September weekend or onto LPPOA property. Thank you sincerely, Anthony M. Falcone, PE.
Well, I never had any plans to close a public hearing tonight anyhow, so I'm assuming, Rich, you can work on those responses for the next meeting.
I mean, the public hearing would necessarily have to be adjourned because a secret determination hasn't been made by the town board yet.
Right.
And so what I suggest is that those comments be compiled and then we'll respond to them in writing to the board.
That's fine. That's fine. So unless somebody has something different, I don't think there's anybody from the public trying to get either way into us right now, right?
Peter, you indicated that the comments would be compiled. Are you
No, we're-
compiling? I just want to make sure we understand who's compiling the comments here so that we get the response. That can be you, Sarat, or?
Yeah, well, I already assumed that I would do it, so that's really my job here.
By the way, the meeting is not being broadcast. If it's not being broadcast, nobody's watching us.
That may explain why we can't hear Paul right now.
No, Paul responded to me before.
Hey, guys. The meeting is going live right now.
Not on 22.
It's not on channel 20.
All right, stand by, guys.
All right, well, let's continue. There's nothing we can do about that right now anyhow, I don't
Right,
think.
right.
It'll be up on a replay, obviously.
Yeah, it's going out over YouTube Live. I got confirmation on that. I could see it on my mobile phone, and the town TV channels. It says live on my side.
Okay.
It's not here. It's not being broadcast.
The only thing
I
I
haven't-
think is that the storm came in the other day. Maybe something got knocked out that I don't know about, and I can't see on the outside world. But I'm doing what I can on this end to make sure it's going out.
John, Paul, I just received a text that says you are on YouTube and 30 people are watching.
Okay, so it is working on that. Yeah, I'm doing everything on my end. It says that it is going out, so it's got to be something else on the outside world with the storm that came in that's blocking.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay.
All right, is there any other board member comments? Otherwise, or Rich, do you have anything you want to wrap up before we go to the next item on the agenda?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You need a motion to move it?
Next on the agenda is a public hearing from Bach. We received 3 letters, our town planner, an engineer,
John,
and from the
John,
open
can I
space.
just- John, can I interject? Maybe
Sure.
I missed it, but did you officially continue the public hearing?
That's what I asked if we needed.
No, I just, in my comments, I said we weren't, but no, I did not. For the record, we're going to continue the public hearing till the next meeting, which I believe is May 13th, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
Is that all right, Joe?
Yep, that'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
I got this.
Barbara, a notice has been sent out for the public hearing for Cobbling Rock?
Yeah. 1 second. The sign was posted March 31st. It was published in the Somers Record on April 2nd, and the mailing went out on April 3rd.
Okay. For the record, this is an application for a 9-lot conservation subdivision with steep slopes, protections, management and erosion and sediment control, and tree removal permits with the construction of 2 roads and a preliminary conservation subdivision. The property is located on the south side of Cobbling Rock Drive and Dr. Tony's Road, and it's located in an R120 zoning district. The applicant's representative like to give a brief presentation tonight,
Sure,
please?
sure. Thank you, John.
Sure.
For the record, my name is Matt Gironda from Bimbo Associates, project engineers, representing Vito Andriano, applicant, Cobbling Rock Estates. The board, I believe, is aware of the project, but for the public's benefit, I could certainly share my screen and walk them through the proposed subdivision layout. We'll put that up now. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
As mentioned, the project is located on the south side of Cobbling Rock Drive and Dr. Tony's Road, which currently terminate at Hammerhead turnarounds to allow for extensions of the 2 future town roads which we plan to build as a part of this subdivision. There will be an extension to Cobbling Rock Drive, which you see here, approximately 900 feet in length, to allow for the construction of 6 single-family residential lots off of the Cobbling Rock Drive extension. And there'll be a proposed town road extension off Dr. Tony's Road to allow for the remaining 3 parcels for a total of 9. Currently, what is in front of the board and what we're here for a public hearing tonight is a conservation subdivision where we plan to permanently deed restrict a parcel here on the eastern side of the property, which mainly contains steep slopes, and a deed restricted conservation area in the central part of the property, which contains steep slopes, wetlands, watercourse, and all those areas will be permanently restricted from development. We arrived at this conservation subdivision. We went through several iterations on a conservation plan, which to prove our lot count and provide 9 zoning conformant lots on the property using the R120 zoning district requirements. What we're proposing now in our conservation subdivision is actually every lot generally meets the minimum lot size for the, or is close to meeting the minimum lot size for the zone. We're about 100,000 minimum square foot area. The minimum conservation lot area that we're allowed to propose is 60,000. However, in an effort to try to maintain continuity with the adjacent zone of R80, we provided 100,000 square foot minimum lot size, which is actually in excess of the minimum lot area required for the adjacent zone. As I said, we will be constructing 2 town roads, which will be capturing stormwater runoff and treating on property and 2 infiltration basins. We see one here, we see one here at the end of the cul-de-sac. We have, in moving to the conservation subdivision from the conventional, we've actually reduced the impervious surface. We've shortened the roads because we've been allowed a reduced frontage requirement, and we've reduced our overall disturbance to environmentally sensitive land by approximately 1 acre. With that being said, I believe that that we've put together a solid plan here, which takes into account the natural features of the site, maintains the natural topography of the land as best we could, and minimizes impacts to the environmentally sensitive land on the property. Yeah, with that being said, happy to answer any questions the board or the public has.
Thank you. Any board member questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a
Before-
question. I have a question. It has to do with the fact that, as I understand it, in order to do this, the town board has to amend our zoning ordinance?
I'm not aware of that. Brett, you're on mute.
Who's on mute?
Brett is on mute.
Yeah, I'm off now. I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, would you?
Yes, it has been determined that the existing conservation regulations do not permit what is being proposed here, and in fact, what we have considered in the past, which is to put the conservation lands on individually owned parcels. The way the regulations currently read, that those conservation lands have to either be taken over by some kind of conservation entity or by the town of Somers. And as we have seen in the past, when it's these smaller and not large areas such as happened with Stewart Farm. There is no entity that is interested in taking them, and the town is not interested in taking them. So having identified this in the zoning, I discussed it with the town attorney, Roland Baroni, and he agreed with my interpretation that currently written, this was not permitted, but that it was something that the town would want to pursue. We have drafted a minor amendment, just several words, that is actually going before the town board at its meeting tomorrow night, and the town board will officially refer that zoning amendment to you as the planning board for your comments, and you will take it up at your meeting of March 13th, send back your recommendations. They will set a public hearing, and if all goes well, they will approve that amendment, which will permit the configuration of this conservation subdivision as you currently see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I cast a question?
Sure.
We've seen memos from the fire department regarding the turnaround radius at the cul-de-sacs. And can you clarify why there's a difference between what the town ordinance code says is correct and what the fire department seems to want?
Well, I mean, I can clarify the difference in the codes. It'd be hard for me to tell you why there's a difference, but the town code requires, town road construction requires a minimum 90-foot diameter cul-de-sac, which is what's provided on these plans. An update to the New York State Fire Code in 2015, which specifies a minimum of 96 foot. Now, typical fire apparatus can turn around in a 90-foot diameter cul-de-sac, and what we've done on past projects is always, the town code has always ruled. I believe that there is something in the state fire code that allows local fire officials to make that determination if there's a variation from the code, the fire code, and a different variation of that in the town ordinance. Again, it'd be hard for me to tell you why there's a difference, but what I can tell you is that we laid this subdivision out, designed both town roads to comply with all of the town dimensional standards, slope requirements that are listed in the town road construction specs available through the town website. So again, this was a request by the Fire Bureau, Fire Prevention Bureau that we responded to, and it's in our estimation we provided what the code requires. I mean, and again, that's what we've done on past projects.
Are you going to be able to work this out with the fire department?
You know, again, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to. I mean, you know, there's plenty of road construction in the town of Somers that have 90 diameter cul-de-sacs that have not been an issue in the past. So I'm not quite sure why it's come up now, and there would be a request for something additional than what's written in the town standards, and that what has been adhered to on prior projects.
Joe Ariel, can Joe Ariel comment on this? And particularly to the issue of the town having a regulation that is less restrictive than the state. I think that kind of sounds like what the issue is.
Yeah, you know, I can supply the half of the answer, you know, that the applicant couldn't, which is why they might be different, and that is simply that they are you know, controlled by different regulatory entities that, and as you probably all are familiar, code provisions like that, state code provisions like that change, and recommendations change fairly regularly. The question of whether the town, you know, whether one trumps the other in an approval, because I haven't seen the difference before, on this particular issue. I'm not sure as I sit here right now. I can tell the board that I'll have an answer for you within a few days. I mean, there'll be, but I think certainly if it can be worked out with the fire department, that's easy, that's simple, right? And then also if the code provision in question is the fire code provision in question, a recommended distance or a required distance, et cetera, the devil's in the details on these things, which is why I don't want to just offer an opinion right now. But I'll get the board an answer by the time within a few days, I'll have an answer for you. So certainly in time for you to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I would also like to mention is one of the major intentions behind the conservation subdivision was to reduce impervious surface. I know in the grand scale of the impervious surface we're proposing on this lot, by increasing the diameter of the cul-de-sac 6 feet, it's not a huge number, but it's somewhat counterintuitive to the approach of reducing impervious area.
Just, if I can just make a comment, if I recall the original memo from the Bureau of Fire Prevention, they had cited an international fire code regulation, fire code recommendation.
You could be correct on that. I may have spoke when I said the state.
Yeah, and I had done some research on that, and I just thought that, I didn't know why locally we were looking at an international recommendation from a non-governing body such as
Right.
the National Fire
Well, so that's a great point, and that's why I'm glad you mentioned it, because I hadn't seen that memo. If it is that kind of international standards, it could just be a matter of the fact is that all these entities care about different things. They prioritize different things, and that includes the fire department. And the fact that they may want the board to consider or the applicant to consider a different, more stringent regulation doesn't necessarily mean that regulation exercises any jurisdiction over the board. So that's why I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but I can have an answer by Friday on sort of which controls in the process.
Yeah,
Good.
I think this is Vicky. I think generally speaking, what happens is in the NYCRR, they incorporate by reference those standards and they're published for like fire, energy, plumbing, et cetera, for the state.
Right.
So they're all sort of folded in there, and the task would be to take a look at those and
Yep.
file them against ours and see, as you say, what holds what trump, so to speak.
All right.
So Matt, I have a question for you on this topic, right? So
Sure.
Obviously Joe's going to give us a legal opinion. You're going to go and speak with the fire department. Everybody's, going to go to do their respective work. What I'm curious about is, but ultimately the planning board is going to make the decision. And I'm curious, is there any, other than the impervious surface, are there any other barriers towards you using the larger cul-de-sac?
We don't have any super hook and ladders.
Yeah, no, that would be part of the planning board's deliberations on whether we need it or not. That would be but I'm just asking, to compromise the subdivision in any way? Like, does it make driveways more difficult? I'm looking at lot 4. I don't know.
No, I don't see any major complications of it other than the fact that there would be, obviously we'd have to update calculations and additional stormwater treatment and make sure all the numbers check when we add that.
Okay.
We haven't heard that 90 feet is insufficient for our equipment.
Right, and that's sort of the point that we made in our letter back was, as far as I know, there has not been any issues with any of the roads in town at a 90-foot diameter cul-de-sac,
Right.
Which I think is fairly standard throughout the area and other local municipalities as well. So, listen, we will do what we have to do to satisfy the board and what they request and what they require. But in our eyes, 90 foot is sufficient, and it's what we've done in the past, and we feel that it's what we should adhere to and what we've designed these plans to. But again, that's up for you guys to make that decision.
And
we've found that the fire department, I'm talking about we, meaning Heritage Hills, we have found that the fire department has their own limited concerns, and that they don't take into consideration a lot of other aspects, which I believe the planning board will take into consideration. So I'm in agreement. I don't think excess of 90 feet is necessary, but you guys just work it out.
can the town restrict parking on a cul-de-sac and prohibit that from happening?
They do, in the winter months, it's always restricted.
No, I get that, but I mean, like, it's a town road, does the town have the legal authority to post signs that say no parking on the cul-de-sac? Where I'm going with this is that if it becomes an issue, and the 6 feet, is the concern is that now if cars are parked there, right, on the smaller side of the cul-de-sac, it's going to be difficult maybe turning a fire truck around, right? But if the town has the ability to say there's no parking on this particular cul-de-sac, that may alleviate the need to make this under the international standards, if I recall correctly, was like 110 feet. The state talks about 96 and the town code is 90. So I just wanted to know if that was a legal option that we can consider if the applicant would prefer not to make this any bigger and to sort of mediate the safety issue that the fire department's concerned with by prohibiting parking on the cul-de-sac.
It's a legal option. I think, again, we probably want to start with determining whether the requirement's even really applicable, and then get to the question of whether it's what the planning board prefers. But yeah, it's a legal option. Just like on any approved road, the town has the right to impose traffic calming, restrictions and traffic control restrictions. So it's an option.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board member comments?
I have a question of Matt that he may not have the answer to.
I'll do my best.
Well, it's not really an engineering question. We haven't approved this yet. So in theory, there should be no construction going on. Am I correct?
That is correct.
All right. Well, there are complaints from people in the community that many trucks are coming and going.
I think what's happening is the owner of this subdivision, the applicant, actually owns this parcel here at the corner of Whitman Drive and Cobbling Rock,
Yes, I'm aware of that.
which is currently what's under construction. He has permits to build a house on that lot, which was permitted separately prior to this project.
Okay, so that's what's going on. All
That's, from what I understand, yes, that's what's happening.
right.
Nancy, I was out at the site today in preparation for this, and I can confirm that that's what it looked like to me. It looked like that activity was limited to that site.
Okay. Well, it kind of blew my mind when I saw all the emails.
Gave me a chance to get out of the house today.
Yeah.
We should call me and taking me with you. Dorette, do you have some comments?
Truck, maybe, I don't know.
Dorette?
Okay. One of the things I'd like to ask the board, if they have considered the comments from the Open Space Committee in their March 8th memorandum of March 9th, where they were looking at a different type of configuration. I know the board has expressed, its own feelings about this, but I think they should at least give an opinion about what the Open Space Committee discussed. Are you aware of what that was?
Yes,
yeah, I just would like the board to, on the record, say that they've considered it. If they feel that this is the more appropriate way to go with the conservation subdivision, rather than one that has been discussed by the Open Space Committee, I think they should just mention that.
I'll start if you want. I prefer this plan, to be honest with you. I like the way it's laid out. That's my one of 7 opinions.
Yeah,
Me too.
Board members?
I did the walkthrough with the Open Space Committee, and I appreciate the time that they put in.
It was a 2-hour walk.
It was,
Yeah.
and I thought that the report that came after that was incredibly detailed. And so I definitely appreciate the effort and the work that was put in for that. I was privy to conversation between the applicant and the Open Space Committee chairman as they debated the likelihood of being able to modify this plan to place houses in what the Open Space Committee felt or opinionated that was a less of a environmental issue. But I didn't feel that the applicant was confident that that type of construction was feasible for this project. And so with that information, with what I saw myself, with what was detailed in the report, I have to concur with the chairman that this plan, the way it's laid out, I think is the most sustainable for the construction aspect that will reduce the amount of footprint that's required to get the trucks in and out. And I think will be the most marketable on the sales side, although that's generally not a major concern, but it would be for the applicant for all this work and effort that they put into it. So I have to agree that this plan, the way it stands, is appropriate for is that we're at right now.
I agree with, I was on that sidewalk as well, and I agree, I appreciated viewing things differently and from a different perspective. It was a learning curve for me. It also was a delightful 2-hour, I must say. And at 85, I think I did pretty good on that one. But I agree with Chris. I prefer this plan for the reality of it, and it fits in very well with the homes that are already there.
Amen.
This is Vicky. I was on the original site walk, not on the Open Space Committee site walk. I was working that day, so I was unable to attend. My understanding, based on their report of the site walk, was that their vision was to move all construction to the eastern side of the lot, staying completely away from the western side, sort of the stream and west, points west, smaller lots all on that side. And having been on the original walk, I think that the conservation subdivision proposed by the applicant is a better plan. I think that the size of lots would be severely constricted. It would be out of keeping with the lots in the neighborhood. And as some is in its own way, not really, I think, appropriate for the area. So I think we need to stay with something that's the proposal of the applicant for conservation subdivision. It's got appropriate size lots. These lots have been adjusted so that we're not using that area right at the beginning when you come in that was so steep. So I think they've made a very good, exactly, you're marking it right there. So I think they've made a very good adjustment for our concerns and what they realize were concerns on the site. And I'm pleased with this as an accommodation to the needs.
I'd like to support everything everybody said. I think they've done an excellent job taking into what our initial conversations were with them about the problems with the first layout that we saw. And I think that what I see here looks to me to be an excellent layout and taking into consideration the conservation areas that they've chosen to do. And I think we also have to take into consideration the saleability of lots by this developer. And so I go along and support everything that's been said so far.
I agree with my colleagues.
Anyone else? Zarette, do you have any more comments?
Yeah, the only other comment that I have is a small one, but I've read Joe's memo and he agrees on one part, which is that with regard to the tree survey, that can be a condition of preliminary subdivision approval. However, the applicant has requested that the tree survey be limited only to the areas disturbed by common improvements, which perhaps he can define as part of, his discussion now. And I'm suggesting whether the board, once they hear what those are, whether they want to limit it to those or include areas related to house, driveway, septic, and well area disturbance. So Matt, would you identify what you mean by areas of common improvements?
Sure. So the applicant and or developer, however you want to refer to them, really is responsible to construct the roads and drainage. And then the idea is that he would sell these lots off individually to future homeowners that would build their homes, and each individual lot would be subject to town permits, building permits, stormwater permits, tree removal permits. So our thought process on this is obviously it's understood and acknowledged that we need a tree removal permit from the town because we will be removing trees to construct the road and the drainage, meaning the 2 infiltration basins to treat stormwater runoff from the roads. That's what we're talking about when we refer to common improvements. And our thought process behind that is once this road is built and the basins are built to sufficient town standards and approval conditions, and me as a purchaser of property comes in and I buy lot 2 and I want to build my dream house on lot 2, I have to approach the town for all the necessary permits that I would need, one of those being tree removal permits. We have worked on previous projects in town with the principal engineering technician to walk the site, determine trees to be removed, and calculate the appropriate fees. And obviously, the plans would be developed in further detail for individual lot construction at the time that those homes are built. So that's, where we were thinking along the lines of limiting that tree survey to common improvements, meaning roads and drainage.
That's common in custom developments.
Are these lots going to be sold with any provisions that they stay with the driveways and building site locations? Or are we going to be going through this again for every one of these sites?
Well, every time one of these lots is sold, I fully expect that the house locations might tweak a little bit, driveway locations might tweak a little bit when that person wants to build that house. Again, that lot will be a platted parcel on a map, which will be subject and stand on its own and then be subject to permits at that time. Now, I don't believe that those lots would require planning board approval unless there was something that triggered it, i.e. disturbance to a wetland buffer, steep slopes, something along those lines that would require planning board approval. So the idea with our subdivision and what we presented to the board and what we will ultimately have to present to the other outside agencies is we have a piece of property that can support 9 lots, comply with local zoning, local and state stormwater requirements, and county wastewater and water supply requirements.
So,
Well, you,
I'll jump in here for a second. So, relative to the tree removal, I think it's quite consistent with what we've done in the past, which is the common infrastructure, the tree survey be done inside of the common infrastructure as Matt described. And then what we've done, like for example, on Granite Point, is we've gone one step beyond what Matt described. I mean, Matt is correct that when somebody wants to go pull a building permit on an individual lot, they will go to the building department, which will trigger an environmental review by the engineering department, right? And they will need to, for example, look at a tree permit to cut down the trees for the house. That would be a standard process. What we've done on things like Granite Point is we've required that at that time that the applicant very specifically work with the engineering department in order to locate the facilities on the lot in a way that it maximizes the protection of any really important trees. Right? I don't remember the exact language on that, but the board does have the flexibility to, as a condition of approval, require that the applicant work with the principal engineering technician specifically related to the items that might specifically be concerned about, like protecting specimen trees, for example, on properties. And we can manage it in that way as well. That would be consistent with what we've done in the past. The other item relative to location of the homes and can that change? I think the reality is, Bruce, I would be surprised if each of these homes were built to these dimensions in these locations. It's probably more likely than not it won't be. Now, which as, again, and it may actually be beneficial as they start looking at the individual lot for other reasons like protecting a tree species. So the only thing where I would get concerned with that I would have to look at is if the individual lot as it currently exists is relying on common infrastructure for its stormwater management. Like for example, the impervious surface from the going to dump out on the road, and then that gets bigger. Let's say the driveway gets extended, so therefore there's more impervious surface on that individual lot. We'll have to be identifying for lots that are in that condition a allocation of impervious surface towards the common infrastructure that if they exceeded, they would have to manage on their own site, which is again quite consistent with what we've done in other areas, and we can put some language around that as well.
Right. And we,
yeah,
I apologize, just to build on what Joe said, as we've gotten to this iteration of the plan, we have made every effort actually to keep, and actually every lot manages its own stormwater on its lot. There is a small portion of maybe some of the driveway aprons that might go out to the street, but obviously that's all accounted for in the sizing requirements in our SWIP. But in understanding Joe's point, we've laid this out to keep each lot as, let's say, independent of town infrastructure as we could.
I'm relatively new, not as new as Chris on the board, but my concern is less with the trees and more with the idea, obviously any individual architect or developer is going to have his own way with where he's going to be roughly locating the houses or what kind of a location will be. I'm more concerned with, let's say you take the lots 1 through 6, is that I'm concerned that lot 1, let me blow this up again. I'm sorry, I'm talking about lot 1,
Right.
lot 4, and lot, what is it, 8?
8, yep.
Yeah, that somebody decides, I don't know what controls we have, that if somebody decides, well, I'm going to go into that conservation area, that's my major concern. And I don't want us to be involved in lawsuits or things like that is that a unnecessary concern on my part?
Well, I'll speak to lot 4 and 8 specifically. There actually is no part of the conservation area on both lots. The deed restricted conservation area is fully contained in lots 1 and lot 5. Now, that being said, if the purchaser of lot 8 decides that he wants to propose something that would meet zoning requirements, but that may disturb the wetland buffer, then he would be subject to wetland permit requirements from the town at that time, in which case the planning board would be able to have input on that application. You know, the permitting requirements of the town, I think, are sufficient to alleviate your concern there, but, you know, that's my opinion.
Right, and specific to the conservation easements, Bruce, is that that's going to be deed restrictions. They won't be able to put the house there.
Okay, that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to know, because I didn't want to be involved in future lawsuits where they say, well, I bought this lot and they're telling me where I can't build on a house.
So if they bought the lot and they had a good attorney, they should have read the deed on it first.
Okay, good. That's all.
Actually, Matt, I'm going to raise one question looking at this now. Whereas the conservation lots are for 1 and 8, is it 1 and 8? No, 1 and 5.
It's on lot 1 and 5.
Right. What about and I can't see in the small scale, what the purple and yellow actually stand for, but those areas that are purple and yellow on lot 8 and some of the other areas on lot 4, why those areas are not considered areas to be conserved?
I think from a lot size standpoint and just a general layout, it made sense for this rear property line to be where it was. There's actually an existing wall, I think, back there, which is generally on that wall, which is something we always try to do when we lay out subdivisions. If there's a wall or a natural landmark, we would like to use it if we could. The purple and yellow, what you see in the hatched area on the plans, the yellow indicates wetland buffer area. The pink hatched area indicates steep slopes inside of a wetland buffer. So it's sort of a doubly environmentally sensitive portion. The red patch you see represents steep slopes within an actual wetland boundary. So not the buffer area, within the wetland itself. And then the blue area represents the limits of the flagged wetland.
Okay, but let's go to lot 8. Lot 8 then has areas that are wetland buffer and again, the steep slopes areas. If those are worthy of conservation in lot 5, why aren't they worthy of conservation in lot 8 and lot 4?
Well, I think at the initial meetings when we talked about conservation subdivision, the board really wanted us to try to maintain lot size that was consistent with at least a neighboring zone and hold.
No, but you're missing my point. Excuse me, you're missing my point.
I think I'm getting to your point.
I am not saying to change the lot size. I am just saying, why doesn't lot 8 and lot 4 have a deed restriction on it as well for those areas?
I mean, I don't think the applicant would be disagreeable to conserving land that really nobody's going to develop anyway. I mean, you know, the thing about it is there is portions of wetland buffers that could be developed with a permit. And, you know, the applicant has obviously tried to zero in on the areas on the property that we thought were most sensitive and made the most sense to conserve. Again, if that deed restricted area changed slightly, I don't think he's going to be that much opposed to it.
So I have a question. What guardrails would be in place for a builder now to know that that's a land buffer, right? If it doesn't have to go in front of a planning board, if there's no SWIP issues here, what prevents someone from building a pool in that pink or that gray area once they buy plot number 8 or plot number 4?
Well, when
They have-
when
they have
that
to
owner would
apply
submit
for
to the town for a building permit, he would have to provide a survey and the location of the house on that survey showing that it complies with all zoning. And it would also have to go through an environmental clearance process, in which case that area would be identified on a survey.
And
If-
you wouldn't
if-
get a pool.
Right, if somebody presented a survey to the town after this that didn't show a wetland on that property or buffer on that property, they shouldn't be in business.
Well, let me ask you a question. I understand what we're talking about, and I understand what you're saying, but it would make life a lot easier for the town, including the planning board, if these other lots had deed restrictions on them, so we wouldn't have to go through a discussion that may result in lawsuits or a lot of other things with regard to, if there were deed restrictions, the person buying the property would know that they can't go into that area. And if they do, they're going against the deed restriction, and thus we would have a stronger case in any kind of debate.
I don't think we arbitrarily apply deed restrictions to any wetland.
Right, that's where I was gonna go,
Well,
Dennis.
right,
Fair point.
everybody is subject. When you go to build a pool, I don't care what property you own. When you come in to build your pool, that's when you find out where you can put your pool. It's the same for any lot.
Amen.
Okay.
What I would
It's
say.
really not an issue. It's not an issue.
Yeah, what I would say, and it's just something that it is correct. Like if you look at lot 8, I guess it is, right? That yellow area in the back, which is only a wetland buffer area, right? That area could be developed with a permit. With a permit, that would have to come before this board.
Right.
So to me, it's really the issue of this board that says, well, no, if you don't want to put that decision in the hands of a future board to maybe potentially allow that to happen, and this board feels very strongly that no, those things should be protected, I think that would be the delineation line between going to a conservation easement and making sure through this board's action that nothing will ever happen on that area, or the alternative is rely on the town's process and let the future board make a decision in the event a homeowner wanted to do something in that area.
And if a homeowner did do something in that area without a permit, they'd be subject to a violation.
Correct. Put that aside, because that I don't think will happen, right? I think what it is it's relative to whether this should be in a deed restriction, conservation restriction, or not. It is wholly dependent upon whether this board will rely on future boards to provide maybe potential opportunities to develop, or whether this board wants to say, no, we don't want that to happen. And then at that point, you would deed restrict it. That's to me would be the delineation. Joe, Ariel, you might want to comment on that, but that's how I would view it.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And the other thing that I would add to it is, earlier, I think it was Chris that said that if somebody had a halfway decent lawyer, they'd see something. With a deed restriction, even if you have a lousy lawyer, you're going to see it. And one of the advantages of, again, as Joe Bargallo says, if you feel strongly that part of what you're approving here and part of the reason you're approving it is that these areas that at the moment are shown as not being developed will never get developed. And it'll be irrespective of whether delineations change in the future or boards change or permitting processes change, whatever. If you feel strongly about that, and certainly if the owner doesn't mind, right, or doesn't object, then the deed restriction will be the way to go. It's the most obvious, plainest. It shows up in a title search.
Right.
Nobody can miss it, right? And there's no discretion really once that happens. I'm not saying that those things can't possibly be unwound, but they're very complicated to unwind and they rarely get done. And so that would be the issue. If I've heard other board members in this conversation say that on this, in cases like this, it's not that high a priority for you. So that's really a planning judgment for you, but that would be the distinction between the two options.
The one thing I will say is this was brought up before, and I know that it's just generally not something that is really a concern of the boards, but the marketability and the saleability of the properties is obviously paramount to the applicant and the developer. The deed restricted areas that we've identified on lots 5 and lot 1 are 2 very large parcels. They allow for really privacy, and they don't impact the developability of the parcel. In fact, I think they enhance the marketability of it.
It is. It's bragging rights for the homeowner in some way.
In some way.
I got my 5,000 square foot house on 13 acres, and
Right.
you can't do anything with it. I totally can appreciate that personally.
And lots 4 and 8, you're talking about 2.5 acre lots. It's a different scenario, I believe.
I mean, just my personal opinion, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I think that we should faith in the system that we have in place that would put the onus on a new developer who's purchased that land to ensure that they don't build on a wetland buffer, just like any other project. I just didn't know if that was already delineated wetland, and now we're looking into other issues with that. But for a buffer area that's less, maybe 15% of the total area, I don't think that we need to personally put in a deed restriction for it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we've been dealing with this year after year with old pre-existing parcels throughout this town where people go to do something and they run into this on their property and they find out they can't put the pool there. They can't extend their house there, etc.
Yeah.
Chris, I agree with you. If these were smaller parcels, I think then it would be a completely different attitude on our part, I think.
And I think the applicant's done a good job of trying to conserve what is conservable. I don't know if that's a word.
Yes.
But what can be conserved. And, yes, there is a little impingement on lot 8 and lot 4. But I think that any developer that's going to build on this is going to realize that and just not have such a, far offset off the road or off the driveway.
Right.
I mean, practically speaking, if you look at lot 4 between the driveway, the proposed septic, and where the house is, and the other constraints on the west side of the lot, they don't have much room to move anyway.
Right.
Yes.
So they're really hemmed in. I don't think you want to.
Right.
What would be the point of doing it? Also, where would you draw the line, so to speak? You've got the wetland buffer. You've got that combination slope and buffer. What are you going to do on the steep slope? It seems kind of gratuitous. I don't see the point of it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have to disagree. I can tell you that in Heritage Hills, a pool somehow got built on a steep slope embankment. Okay, so it was extended into steep slope area, and we found that out because the pool started to move down the hill at a very small rate, but enough to disturb the filter system on the pool. It only went down about 3 inches, but we had to we spent $500,000 replacing the pool because the developer built it on landfill because it was on a steep slope.
Bruce, that pool was built before this town had anything to do with paying attention to steep slopes and wetlands.
Okay.
We are not that town anymore.
Okay.
That's why I say we need to have faith in the systems that we have in place now. Let's take advantage of the conservation subdivision the way that it is, and sort of get this project rolling. That's my opinion.
Amen.
Matt, can you step out so I can see the legend for the green and the brown on lot 4?
Sure.
Just remind me what
So
that is.
so the lighter green hatch is steep slopes between 15 and 25%, and the darker brown hatch represents very steep slopes over 25%.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the pink area in the wetland does not distinguish between what's 15 and 25 and up, but I can tell you, looking at those contours, the majority of that area that we are deed restricting, is slopes over 25%.
Nobody's gonna
See the
build.
line. You can see the lines, they're close together, yeah.
Any other planning board member comments or staff?
No.
It's just a wonderful piece of property.
Beautiful.
Well, we still have to open public hearing.
Consider the public hearing, right?
Now, is the
No.
reason why we have to continue that because of what was discussed earlier about the local law?
Yes.
Yeah, would you want to take any comments tonight, or you want to wait till the next meeting?
I mean, we're here. If there's comments, well, I might as well hear them.
Just Barbara, Paul, or Saret, do you have anything? Any comments
Charette has two comments.
from the public?
From the public, whenever you're ready.
No?
Yeah, Charette has comments. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
go ahead.
There are two emails. Sunitha Ramamurthy on Cobbling Rock. Let me get her question. I have the following questions. One, timing, how long will the construction for the entire development take? Two, what measures will be done to minimize the construction noise, large trucks stored on roads, etc. during construction? Three, what measures will be taken to ensure safety to kids and residents during construction? Currently, 2 bus stops are located at the exact locations where the roads will be developed, so passing trucks will be passing through those areas as kids walk to bus and wait for bus. Many are young in kindergarten and elementary ages. 4, will sidewalks be built to increase safety in the area? 5, what measures have been taken to minimize impact to trees, animals, and environment? That was one item. And then there was a second from the same person. What are the zoning requirements for each lot? Are any variances being granted to permit less acreage for each lot?
So there was a lot of them. I'll try to hit on everything there. And as we've discussed in the conservation subdivision, we've made really every effort to conserve what we could and made sense to maintain the feasibility of development of this parcel, conserve the environmentally sensitive lands. As far as safety to kids and neighboring properties, none of this project is planned to be developed outside typical construction hours or anything delineated in the typical requirements of contractors that are listed in town code. I believe, the applicant lives in this neighborhood. He's lived in this neighborhood for a long time, and he's raised a family in this neighborhood. And he obviously has a lot of friends in this neighborhood, and he's not trying to step on anybody's toes, and he wants to do this the right way. So, this is a local person that's going to do everything he can to maintain safety and integrity of people in the neighborhood. I think she had another question. She had
Will sidewalk, what measures will be safety, let's see, sidewalks.
There's no intentions to provide sidewalks. I mean, these are all going to be private parcels. I don't know where the sidewalks would go to, why it would really be necessary.
I just think a grassy area at the bus stops would suffice.
Right, and there will be an area, there's a 50-foot wide right of way and a 24-foot wide town road. So you have space on either side of, you have a shoulder where people can walk, and town road requires a 4-foot wide grass shoulder as it is, which essentially would allow for pedestrian access outside the roadway anyway.
And her last, she was asking about timing.
I would think one construction season would be enough to build the roads. The construction of each individual lot is going to be as they're sold. I mean, it's hard for me to say, put a number on, length of time associated with that. But as far as the common improvements go, I wouldn't expect it to take longer than 1 year.
With our economy now, that's not easy to predict.
No, that's
Yeah.
not. That is certainly not.
And let's hope the schools do get to
I
open.
was going to say, well, hopefully some new students at Blue Peak Academy, their parents will buy a lot and build a house in Cobbling Rock.
You got it.
I do have a question, Matt. Could you identify what she's talking about regarding the location of the school bus stops?
I am not 100% sure of where those school bus stops are. It wouldn't really make sense to me that there would be a bus stop at these two intersections because there's not existing homes there. There is a driveway here, which the bus, I assume, could pick somebody up in front of their own house at that driveway. But that bus would have to cross past all those homes. So I don't see why there would be one combined bus stop at that corner. I could be wrong, but that's not something I'm aware of.
Yeah. Also, the bus stops change every year.
Yeah, and they typically put them in groups within the development. So they're not stopping at every driveway. They're stopping at every 6 or 8 driveways.
Okay.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Paul, got a little problem. Joe Barbagallo got bumped out. Can you get him back on, please?
Every time the screens share goes on, it bumps me out.
Yeah, I'm out. And don't miss me.
We hear you.
No, I mean, it freezes my screen completely and knocks me out of the meeting.
I hear you.
Yeah, I've had to log in 5 times tonight.
I got locked out during the Bluestone Peak Academy at the end of it. I came back in, you were on Cobbling Rock.
You there?
Yeah, Joe Barbagallo got knocked out.
It's Paul. I think the reason why it's happening is because the bandwidth is going on with the internet, either at their location or possibly here at Town Hall. There's a lot of people doing these Zoom meetings these days, so something's going on.
Okay.
I see him.
There he is. He's
Do we
back.
have to go back?
Back, thank you.
John, I do have a couple.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
There's Dennis.
Any more comments from anyone?
I think Barbara has some text messages.
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I think I may have lost one and I hope I didn't. But this one is talking about there is already damage to the road from the past few weeks from oil leaking from the trucks coming and going from the site. We realize this is a separate project, but since it is the same developer, we have concerns about the much larger project. Sarah and Tom Frankie, residents of Dr. Tony's Road. We have concerns about construction occurring evenings and weekends, which is already occurring at the active construction site. We also have concerns about children being safe from construction vehicles. And that's what I've got.
Thank you.
Again, I know this, I can't really speak to the contractor's means and methods. What I can tell you is he's a local resident, and I would expect him to take every effort to be safe and not endanger the safety of any of his neighbors. Unfortunately, he's not here to speak tonight. I don't know that he's the most computer savvy with the Zoom conference, but
I would suggest we share those notes with Zito and let him talk to his contractors.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, Matt, just pass that on to him, would you please?
Yep, will do.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification or for a statement on the record, I believe I saw some email traffic about the planning and engineering going out to the site to do an inspection of, for a complaint of work being done, and it wasn't. So I just wanted to, can anyone confirm that they saw that as well?
Yeah, that's correct. You're right, Chris.
Right. So the town sent someone from P&E to address, assumably, a complaint, which sounds very much in line with the text message about construction happening on the weekends and being done at the site when in fact it's not. So I just wanted to put that out there for the record.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Paul, just tell Paul, we're now on channel 22 in Comcast. Just came on.
How's my hair look?
And you
Good.
just came on channel 20 just now.
Okay, guys, I've been working on the unit over here, and I managed to get it going.
Okay.
Any
Good
other
job.
board member comments or anything from staff?
No.
No, John, this submittal is, we have no new information and from the last meeting, and similar to the last meeting, we're comfortable with the board proceeding with the public hearing. And frankly, if the board so chose, when the time is right, to move to preliminary approval.
Okay.
Nothing that's outstanding that we can as a condition of preliminary.
Right.
How does the board feel on that?
Just remember, excuse me, you cannot,
We need an amended code.
right,
So I was going to ask, I was not aware of that till tonight. So
yeah, you cannot continue until the zoning change has been approved by the town board.
And
So,
are they having
I'm
they
going
having
to
a
continue the public hearing until May 13th.
So there's a public hearing at the town board tomorrow night on that zoning change?
I'm asking if there is.
I have to look at the agenda to remember, but it's on their agenda, I think, to set a public hearing
I
and
believe
to refer it to the planning board for comment and set the public hearing for the May meeting.
I think Gene's got to mute his, a lot of feedback there. That's why we're hearing ourselves in
I'm
there.
hearing an echo there.
Yeah.
Sounds to me somebody's got the TV on in the background, I think.
Yeah, please lower the TV in the background or whatever you have going on. That's
Bruce, was that you? And
No, not my TV.
Saret, are you saying that we need to keep the public hearing open till the May meeting?
Well, I'm going to ask Joe Ariol. I'm not sure you have to keep it open.
Yeah, you don't actually have to keep the public hearing open because there'll be a public hearing on the zone text amendment or zoning amendment itself,
Right.
Independent at the town board. And unless there's any contemplated change, which I doubt, because I think the whole reason that the zoning change has some impetus is because people like the plan. I think we've heard that we like the plan for the most part.
Mhm.
So if the plan's not going to change, you can close your public hearing. You just can't take any action until the
Right.
zoning is
Right.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
What did you say, Dennis? Withdraw?
I'll withdraw my motion to move the public hearing.
All right. All right.
And then I'll
You
make
want
a,
to wait till the,
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second that motion.
Can we,
all in favor?
can,
All right.
but can we keep it, can we accept comments over the next 10 business days as we always do?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Especially- Okay,
Yes, yes.
just to let people know
All
who
right.
might have had trouble calling in or something, that they can still make
Right.
comments.
Right.
That's good, Vicky, absolutely.
Yep. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, guys. Have a
I
good
have
night.
I have a legal question. What Vicky just brought up, I always meant to ask. When we close a public hearing, even if we didn't say what Vicky just recommended, isn't it a fact that you have 10 days automatically to write in after we
No.
close the hearing?
No,
Or do
that-
you have to state that?
you should state it. The provision you're thinking of is a specific provision that is related to certain secret public hearings.
Oh, okay, that must be it, yeah.
Yeah, but no, you should say if you're going to leave it open.
All right.
for comment.
Before we move off this item, and obviously we'll be coming back next meeting, I don't know if the board wants to direct staff to prepare the preliminary resolution for next.
I was
contemplation.
gonna ask that.
Yes.
How do you feel, board?
Yes.
Subject to any change that the town board might impose,
Well,
let's go for it.
Let me just look at the dates here, whether the timing is going to work. No, the timing is not going to work because your meeting is on the 13th and the town board is holding its public hearing on the 14th. So yeah, we could have a draft, but you cannot act on the preliminary subdivision on the 13th.
no.
So does it even make sense to be on an agenda if we've already closed the public hearing and we can't proceed with the next action?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, Matt, and that's why I'm saying it probably makes sense for the board to direct Saret and I to get the resolution ready so that when we come back at the June meeting, we'll have a draft that has been well circulated, well vetted at that point.
Yes.
Okay, that works.
Yeah.
No,
Sounds good to me.
agreed.
Do we need a motion for that?
Well, if you do, I make it.
I don't think we need a motion to
You
direct
don't.
staff to.
No. We will do it. You don't need
Okay.
to motion us
All right.
to do it.
Thank you.
Brad, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye, Matt.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Have a good night.
All right.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the project review for the Penny two-lot subdivision. It's an application for preliminary subdivision, tree removal, stormwater management, and erosion sediment control permit, and the steep slope permit for the creation of two lots from one existing lot with a single-family house and construction of two new single-family houses on a 1.3 acre parcel where proposed access is only available from an unimproved but mapped town road in an R10 district located at 19 Olive Drive. Does the applicant want to give a brief presentation, please?
This is Jack. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Jack,
Oh, why is that?
if you can share the screen, or I think, John, you had shared the plan before.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it up now for you. Hello?
Yeah, Jack, look at the bottom of your screen there. It should say start video.
There we go.
Oh, it says stop video.
All right, click stop video and then start again. Just try that, see if you get on.
It's on.
You're on.
Now?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, this property is owned by Panbar Realty, Lou Panny and John Burrell. It's at 19 Olive Drive in the town of Somers in Lincolndale. It's 1.3 acres in an R10 zone. which requires 10,000 square feet minimum lot size. We have 2 lots, one at 0.77 acres and 1.6 acres, which is significantly over the 10,000 square feet. This property was previously 2 lots, and sometime in the past, we don't know how far past, they were merged, probably because they were under the same ownership. We have received an approval of the Westchester County Health Department for the septic system for construction of the house on lot number 1, which included the whole property, 1.3 acres, and we're presently submitting for a subdivision to create a second lot. We're also going to extend the length of Olive Drive approximately 200 feet to a hammerhead to provide a place for the town to push snow in the winter time. The total area of disturbance on this project is 0.8 of an acre. We received comments from Joe Woodward and Curran. A lot of comments, but we addressed them, resubmitted earlier this week. I don't know if Joe got a chance to look at them, but I think the
They're
main
not
point-
fine, they're too late.
No, that's fine. The main point is the extension, I think, is the extension of Olive Drive to get to lot number 1. And we extended the width of the proposed width of the extension of lot Olive Drive matches the width of the existing asphalt pavement in Olive Drive. That's all. Can you see me yet?
We
What
see
is
your
the,
plan.
The plan's on
we
the.
see the plan. What's
Okay.
how does Olive Drive end?
It ends, it's just to the right of the word olive in the road. That's where it shows station 00. You see that? Yeah, right there.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the new road.
The new road starts there and goes to the hammerhead to the right, just before the word drive. We're picking up, with the new pavement, we're picking up that amount of drainage in some infiltrators just before the hammerhead.
These are very, very steep driveways, aren't they?
Excuse me?
They're very steep driveways, aren't they?
Can't hear you.
I said they're very steep driveways, aren't they?
Oh, they meet the code, the town code requirements for slopes. There's driveway profiles there. Joe didn't have any comments on the driveway slope. Or did I mention there was an existing house on lot number 1, which we're demolishing and constructing a new house. But there already was a house.
Joe, you make some comments, Joe?
I wanted to, I mean, all right, I'll start, but so I think Jack is right. I mean, the memo is a typical initial memo where we make sure that we try to point out comprehensively all the items that we see. It's not atypical to see a memorandum of that length. I think, to me, there's really 2 issues that are connected that I think are the biggest challenge. You know, one is the road extension, and Sorrel will go into more detail on that. And depending upon where that goes, that could trigger, and I know Jack is looking at this, but that might trigger additional stormwater if that puts the total disturbance over an acre. So I think that, you know, right now, this total disturbance is under an acre. If the road extension, based on, you know, extending the road per town requirements, triggers us over, that would require additional stormwater, and these lots are pretty constrained, so I think there could be some challenges there. So I think that those really relate to the two issues that I see, and they're connected. So one of the things, Jack, that I was curious about that I don't think we specifically called out in the memo, but do you know where the limit of our paper road is? And when I see your hammerhead that is extending, downward on this page where the infiltrators are, is that even in the town's right of way?
It appears that the town right away goes to the county line. We show the end of the asphalt, and actually the tax map showed the right of way going to the property line. Just as a matter of, one of the things I have in the resubmission, I included the area of the road improvements in the area of disturbance, and we're still under an acre. I mean, we're pretty close to an acre. We're still under an acre.
Right. So I think it's going to be important for us to understand what is that true limit. I think what you're saying, and I'll have to, Jen and I'll have to verify this, but I think what you're saying is from the property line for this lot to be subdivided, from there to the bottom of the page, that's all town-owned property? That whole hillside is town-owned property?
I don't know where you're talking about, though. On the bottom of the
Underneath the hammerhead.
Under the hammerhead, all this blank area, what is that? That slope, that's a steep slope that goes down to that road. Isn't that somebody's property?
Well, I think the property line is at the edge of the hammerhead. Tell you what.
I just want to make sure that, Jack, as we're looking at this, we're not putting this hammerhead on somebody else's property, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That anything that you're suggesting is inside of the town's right of way. So to me, that's an important thing.
That's something I'll have to take a look at. Yeah.
Right. And, and of course, we want to see the stormwater calcs for those infiltrators, and I'm going to have to coordinate with the highway department. I don't think they're going to be that thrilled about taking care of infiltrators, but we'll chat with them about that. Unless you've already had that conversation with them.
No, I haven't, but we received comments on the original submission like last week, and I turned around the response to the comments like in a couple of days, so you didn't get a chance to look at it, but
right, but see, this item here I think is going to be the crux of how we move forward, right?
yeah, we know
The
that's
access.
why we submitted this, so we can get the serious comments, and that's one of the comments. But we'll have the surveyor look at the adjacent property lines.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted, also, this hammerhead, I mean, we already had our previous cul-de-sac problem with the fire department.
Yeah.
Does this meet fire department regulations?
Yeah, we're gonna have the fire department and we're gonna have the highway superintendent attend this, I'll tell you.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, this is essentially a driveway. I mean, the existing Olive Drive, you could see ends, and the previous driveway for the existing house is where word Olive is.
It's a paper road.
What?
It's a paper road.
It is, but it has it's a paper road beyond the asphalt pavement. So we proposing to extend the road to provide a road that's similar to the existing road that the town is already using and maintaining, and giving them an area where they can push snow. They can push snow.
Can I comment? Can I comment, please?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think there's a basic issue here related to the road.
Okay.
Steve Woofel apparently worked with Jack and John for some time on this and got some feedback, I think from Roland on this at some point. And the alternatives, as I put in my memorandum dated March 26th, based on my discussions with Steve, appear to be the following. The applicant really has three alternatives, and that means the planning board has three alternatives. The applicant can choose to build a road to town specifications in order to build those two houses. And then there's no question, within the town right-of-way, it will build a road to town standards. If it chooses not to do that, it only has two other alternatives. One is to go to the zoning board and see if they can get some kind of a waiver of sorts from the zoning board. And if the planning board suggests that they do that, the planning board should comment to the zoning board as to what they think the issues are and whether or not they're in favor of that. And the third alternative is they can tear down the first house, and apparently from what I just heard Jack said, they already have approvals to rebuild just a single house from the health department. And they could simply rebuild that first house with the existing driveway the way it is, and not rebuild the road to the town standards. And that's separate from this issue of that has been brought up about the hammerhead and what, whether that's in town road right of way, that comes as a second issue. But it's really this question of, are they going to build it to town standards? If they're going to tell you that they don't intend to do that, what is the planning board's position on that? If they go to seek some type of approval from the zoning board.
Right, and I will put some context on that, right? As Jack described, the extension of the existing road, that road does not meet current town standards, right? So if that was the direction that we were going to be moving in, that would be the zoning board action to approve a lesser width road, as an example.
Correct.
I think based on the discussions with Steve, we have to go to the zoning board because we're not going to build a road to town standards. It would be kind of silly to have a 24-foot road connecting to a 12-foot road for 200 feet, and it would be very expensive. So
there's no question about that, Jack. I mean, this is kind of what government and regulation sometimes gets but that would be the process to do what you described, which is an extension in kind of that road out to some hammerhead.
well, does the planning board refer this to the zoning board?
Oh, no.
We
First,
just
we
go to
have
the
to
zoning
decide
board?
whether we're going to recommend that you do that. First, we would have to agree that we approve you going for a waiver. We may not approve you going.
Well, basically, you have to deny him his application to you for 2 lots.
Yes.
And by denying it, he can then go to the zoning board, but it is your prerogative in that denial to make a recommendation to the zoning board as to what your position on this 2-lot subdivision would be.
Yeah, and if I may speak on that, I would actually, Charette is right that you'd start by denying it on the basis that it doesn't, that it doesn't comply. And then the applicant would go to the zoning board seeking that relief. And the zoning board would ask you, for a recommendation. And look, you can communicate something to the zoning board now if you like, but I actually think it's a little ahead of schedule to do so. I mean, and unless you're really comfortable with precisely what you'd want such a thing to say, I don't know that it's any advantage to either you or the applicant to do that now. I think it's just a matter of them going and getting the relief they want. And I think it would be an ordinary part of that process that you would then weigh in on that question.
Okay, I get your point, Joe. I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
What's the resolution of that?
I think right now they're making an application that really can't be approved by you. And I think you would essentially, I don't think you have to pass a resolution of any kind right now. I think having pointed this out to them, the applicant would now go to the zoning board and seek the relief that they need.
I would agree with that.
And then it would come back to you in the ordinary course of business, so to speak.
I would agree with that. I mean, but different towns have different processes. Some towns, the planning board has to refer you to the zoning board, and in other towns, you can just go on your own.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I guess you might have been denied at the building inspector level when you made the application. I suppose you could do it as a referral, and my advice would still be the same. Just do that. Just do a referral. Let it go to the zoning board. The zoning board will seek your opinion and or your recommendation. And as per usual, in the ordinary course of that process, you'll give it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Before we move off that topic, Bruce, Jack, as we move in that direction, I think it'll be very important to make sure that you've got the boundaries of the right of way, boundaries of the paper road, towns right of way pinned down, because to go to the zoning board, I want to make sure that if you're successful at the zoning board, we don't come back to us with an approval that was non-compliant. In other words, meaning it's on somebody else's property, right? So I would just make sure that you pin that down before you go to the zoning board.
No, absolutely. We'll have the surveyor locate the other side of the right of way. Yeah, we'll do that.
Can I ask a question? If, as I'm looking at the map, the next road below Olive, is that Peach or Narcissus? I'm just trying to make sure that I'm properly orienting myself. Because it's not big enough for me to get the context.
Peach.
Okay,
It's Peach.
I thought so. Okay, thank you. Because north is facing that way and, okay.
So to wrap this up, Jack, you're going to go to the zoning board, is that correct?
Yes.
What
Okay.
exactly, yes, but what I don't understand, what are you going to the zoning board for? A waiver of what?
I guess.
I'm assuming the road.
We're going to the zoning board for, we'll determine,
My understanding is we have to deny it.
frontage on a road that does not meet to the town standards.
I have a question.
On what basis? I don't understand. On what basis?
If I get this right, they need a variance from the zoning board to build or to continue a non-up-to-code, up-to-town standard road. Because
Correct.
Olive Drive is really just an asphalt driveway that ends into this paper road that the applicant wants to just continue that paper road to access a second house that is part of the plan to be built. Am I tracking this correctly?
Almost. I think we're
That
improving.
doesn't sound right to me. I've never heard of such a waiver.
If
I've
it's,
never heard the zoning board waive town specs on a road. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Just because they never did doesn't mean they won't do it, but.
Well,
we're-
I'm not arguing that point. I just found
Yeah,
it
we're-
odd.
the road to,
we're extending a non-conforming road, town road, for to get to a house that, and actually, I guess it's like we're extending a non-conforming road, but we don't have frontage required frontage on a town road, and they can do this as like a 280A variance, possibly, or however they want to do it. But basically, this extension of this road is just a driveway to this house.
I understand that. Then that says to me, you're asking for a waiver on the road frontage requirement in an R10.
Yeah, well, what we'll do is we'll have our attorney talk to the planning board attorney and discuss what exactly we should be looking to waive or get a variance from.
Yeah, I mean.
And to get a waiver, don't you need a hardship?
No, it's not a waiver, it's a variance, I think.
And secondary to that, if we're talking about extending a public road, doesn't the town have to accept that you're going to extend the public road? Because then the town assumes responsibility for paving, for plowing. Is there a contingency of length of road under which the town doesn't have to? I would think that would be another issue.
If it would have to be the town standards.
This can
to go into the town. If it's a private road, it can be less than town standards.
Right, but the challenge with that, Dennis, is that it's in a town right away, right? So it's not on the applicant's property, it's actually on the town's property. I mean, if you were to ask me, the best way to develop this is to have them put some kind of a cul-de-sac or hammerhead at the back end of the existing Olive Drive, and there should be a common driveway to these two lots.
Right, that's what I didn't understand. That's why I didn't understand why they're not doing that.
The challenge is because they're relying on the town's paper road. So I don't know if there's a way we could rectify that. I mean, the last thing that Nick needs is more roads to take care of. I'm sure the last thing the applicant wants to do is to build a town standard road, right? It just, to me, makes the most sense if we could just put a cul-de-sac, just like we did Tamarack, right? Put a cul-de-sac at the end of this and then have everything else be a common drive. The challenge becomes, you know, that the town's easement. I don't know if Joe Ariel, you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, there are legal actions you can take in conjunction with the town to decommission a public road and make it a private right of way. It sounds like probably what we ought to do is convene on this, as you said. Let's have the lawyers chat on this, because I think there's more than one way to approach this, and all of them are very nuanced legal approaches. They're not impossible by any means, but I think they require a little conversation and some consideration by your client as to, you know, just what seems like the most direct path to success on it, and the town, frankly, may weigh in and have a definite preference, and that's always a good thing too, you know. So let's your lawyer, me and Roland chat about it, and there's a way to go forward.
Okay, that's good.
Could I ask a question? According to what Joe is saying about making a cul-de-sac and then a driveway, does this second lot run into problems with regard to no frontage?
Yeah, that was it. Yes, that would be the variance. That would be the ultimate 288 variance.
Well, that's why I asked. That's what you're really asking for. You're finding a way around for frontage. I don't understand.
What about the fact that there's other lots on the other side of the road that could tie into this? You know, I mean,
oh, yeah. That's why it's important to know those property lines, because that's obviously a consideration, Jack.
Okay. Well,
and the 288
and take away somebody else's rights, in other words, all right?
And if you go the 288 route, that's actually a town board action. So there's really, and there are even some things that the planning board can waive that wouldn't have to go to the zoning board. So it's really, let's investigate, let's dig a little deeper. There's going to be a way to get there. We should, in conjunction with your client, talk through those options and make sure we're not overburdening the town administratively and overburdening your client in terms of what they pursue. I'm sure there's at least 3 options I can think of potentially, depending on what exactly the goals and the facts are. So
Well,
let's
how
do
we-
that in the next couple of weeks.
How do we accomplish that in today's climate? Do we do this like this, or do we get together in the town hall?
I-
6 feet
I
apart?
think for those purposes, a conference call is probably sufficient.
Okay.
You know, me, Roland, your attorney, you, and we just talk it through.
Yeah, and Jack, maybe you, me, and Steve can get together on this in the field a little bit once you understand more about where that other property line is too. I'm
We'll
happy to get together in the field, and we can keep ourselves somewhat apart on the hood of my pickup truck.
Yeah, all right, well, I'll get the survey, I'll get this thing surveyed, and then I'll call you guys. And then after we meet, then we can meet with the attorneys.
It sounds like.
I'm going to suggest one thing that I keep track of, and I will send emails to you, Jack, and to your clients related to escrow, because all of the things we're talking about currently are not what we talked about in our escrow email. So you will get more emails, and people should hold off till they hear from me.
Right, and I would just say, Saret, I know that there's only been a partial at this point, but this was contemplated in the numbers that I gave you. That's why that number was where it was at.
Okay, I understand that, but there is nothing yet that can cover any of these telephone calls or discussions.
All right, everybody's gotta get paid, I know.
And I would say I wouldn't do anything until you got that survey done.
No, that's what I'm gonna do. This is the first thing.
My suspicion, Jack, is that you're gonna find that right-of-way line is closer to, you know, just like it is on the left-hand side of the page. I don't know what direction that is, but on the left-hand where you see where Olive Road is really on the one side of the town's easement, I bet you when you get over to where you're at, it's the same thing. And you're gonna see that hammerhead and that infiltration area are not the town's right away. And you're gonna might have to flip that and put it in another location. You know, but we'll see what the survey says, but that's my suspicion.
Survey says, actually, if you take 50 feet off of the west property line, that what you're looking at that plan is 50 feet wide.
Yeah, I know, but just as the road was not built to town standards, I'm not convinced we have a 50-foot, you
All
know,
right, well, I'll get it surveyed.
yeah.
All right. Good to go?
Okay,
Okay,
we're set.
I'm good.
You got enough direction, Jack?
Yes, I do. Thanks, John.
All right, take care. Thank you.
I have a simple question that comes to mind because of Cobbler Rock. How does a fire engine get around in this neighborhood? Specifically, how?
You know,
Hammerhead, but only a small engine.
How's the
Yeah, I
fire?
mean, what it comes down to is these roads in all of our lake communities, the fire department is challenged to get around.
Yes, very challenging.
Yeah, well, but that.
That's why I suggested somewheres along here, no matter what happens here, we're going to have the highway superintendent, we're going to have the fire bureau weighing in.
Okay.
Agreed, I made a note of that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Buzz,
Thank
we'll
you very
get-
much.
It'd be nice to get on the field and actually interact with a human being, not over the phone, so.
Yeah, I'll talk to you in next week or so.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, on our last couple of items on our agenda, couple of discussions on the draft local law zoning amendment for the private school in Somers. You want to lead this discussion?
Is Peter or any of those people still around?
Mark's on.
Okay, so why don't you discuss this, because this was part of their petition to the town.
The zoning. Okay, happy
Okay.
to. Good evening, everyone. Glad to see everyone safe and well. Mark Weingarten, partner of Del Bello, Ellen Weingarten, Weiss and Wiedeker, representing 294 100 LLC and its agent Sebastian Capital, together with Bluestone Peak Academy, in connection with their request for the requisite town approvals, including but not limited to a text change to the town's existing zoning regulations to enable the development of a world-class for-profit boarding and day STEAM high school grades 9 to 12 on the former IBM property. As Saret just mentioned, the
Sorry,
proposed
Mark,
zone change.
Mark, can you enable your video? Yeah, now I can see you.
Okay, sorry. As Saret just mentioned, the proposed zone change was referred to your board by the town board for your report and recommendation. This is actually not the first time that has occurred, but since the beginning, there have been a couple of changes, and we'll point that out, but they are minor. If approved, the zoning text change to the OB 100 district will permit the proposed school use on approximately 345 of the 723 total site acreage. Importantly, the special permit only applies to 345 acres of the site, and the zoning for the remaining acreage is 100. So nothing changes for the zoning on those vacant parcels, except for an added express prohibition at the town's request against multifamily use. As previously stated, the proposed zone change would legally permit the school use. There have been no major changes to the proposed use. The two minor changes are as follows. In response to comments from the town, we have inserted more restrictive setbacks so that the school use must be set back from the perimeter property lines, both the street lines and the property line itself. We also clarified the language so that attached multifamily dwellings are no longer permitted in the OB 100 zone. Those are the only changes since the last we reviewed this, and again, it is before you for report and recommendation, and we're available for any questions you may have.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm bringing up the same point that I brought up before. We've spent over a year and a half, more than a year. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We've spent over a year discussing the school. I have a room full of plans and documents and memorandums regarding the school. I have no problem with the school. What I do have a problem with is that we've looked at every tree on the property. We've even gotten the open state people to discuss us how we want to make the curbs so that the turtles don't get caught on the roads. We've got every DC, DEP, and every DOT and everybody else involved in this, which is appropriate. However, there is the ask from the town about eliminating multiple family housing from the sites, and we have done nothing with regard to any investigation with regard to that change. And I foresee that as poor governance, and I have a problem with it.
Well, you know, we've had this conversation previously. We understand your position. I think our position has also been clear that this proposal did not come from us. It was accepted because it was requested by the town. It is a limitation on the development that would be permitted to occur on the remaining acreage of the site. We accepted it because the town requested it, and we are not, we would not be opposed to a change, but again, that's in the context, you can make that recommendation back to the town board. Our discussions with the town board indicate that they are set on having this requirement as part of the rezoning, and we're not opposing it. So, you know, I don't know what, from our standpoint, I don't know what else we could say. If you're asking us, we prefer to have an additional option of use on remaining acreage, of course we would. The question is, I think, to be fair to the town, what they have stated to us is that because of the site, this site and its size, they would be concerned that a multifamily residential development would overwhelm certain town services. And that they just felt it would be potentially too much, and they thought that it needed to be restricted. I'm not going to comment on whether that I think it's accurate or not. It's not for us to decide. We've just said we're indifferent, and we're going to go along with what the town decides.
And zoning is the town board's jurisdiction, not ours.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the town board, if they want to change the zoning here with regard to this, then the town board should be presenting this as a separate issue and not as an issue tied on to this school, and as far as I'm concerned, sort of sneaking it in. And we've done no analysis, no studies, no traffic studies, no housing studies with regard to the negative or the positive effects. And I'm not necessarily saying we should have multiple family housing. I just don't think that it's gotten the analysis that would need to be done in order to make that decision, or our recommendation towards that decision. That's all I'm saying.
I would like to chime in because we've actually discussed this before. I understand the words you use, Bruce, but I think you're missing the point. The town has not stopped the number of houses that can be built on those two parcels. They are merely restricting the type of houses. The zoning is the same. What is it, R2 or R3? I don't remember.
Actually, it's R80. It's OB 100, and it defaults to R80.
It's two houses, it's 2 acres to a house. That hasn't changed. It was always that. But you could cluster. What does that mean? What does that mean? That means you can build a condo or a fee simple house. What they're stopping are the condos. They don't want to lose the tax revenue. They lose 50% of the tax revenue. It's still going to be able to have 2 acres to a house. You just can't have a condominium. It's that simple. And they just don't want it on those 2 parcels. They haven't erased multifamily housing.
It's not fair to the applicant. As the council said, they're not the ones that are requesting this as part of this proposal. So for us to continue, and Bruce, believe me, I'm all for oversight and making sure that, you know, backdoor deals really don't occur in government. And I'm with you on that, Bruce. And I'm not saying that that's what the case is here either. But the applicant is looking to get this school off the ground and has done all of the steps that you even said in your opener about it. They are not building multifamily or single family housing on this property. All they want to do is get this school off the ground. There is those 2 plots now that there is a question of what has to happen or what could potentially happen to it in the future, but that's going to come back to us again, right? And so if Sebastian Capital sells that off and now a developer comes in and wants to try to put in another Heritage Hills or wants to put in a cluster of multifamily 2-acre houses, that's a whole separate plan. And if you have issues with the way the town board did what they did, do what I've done in the past. I go to the town board at a public meeting and I voice my concerns. And I'm there all the time, get people to see me there, and I will comment about it as a resident of Somers. It's as simple as that. I would like to just.
I also, let me chime in too on a couple of points, because Bruce's concerns are absolutely valid in terms of what kind of recommendation he, as a planning board member, would be comfortable with, because that's what it's here for. It's here for your report and recommendation on this zoning change, right? So it's all those concerns are perfectly reasonable in terms of, you know, Bruce's own conscience on what should happen here, right? They are also reasonable considerations for the entire planning board. And when the planning board decides how it wants to what message it wants to send the board. Those are things that can be stated, right? You can say you like it, you can say you don't like it, you can say you like this aspect of it, not that aspect. And you can also say things like, there hasn't been sufficient study yet for a decision to properly be made. One of the things I want to put maybe, Bruce, your mind at ease at a little bit, though, is it's not particularly unusual for zoning changes to be prompted either by the applicant in connection with a specific application or by the municipality as part of the discussions that go along with a specific application coming in. But now to balance that a bit, in light of your concerns, the fact that the board has made that request and that the applicant is now before you looking for that relief as part of its application and not part of a separate standalone proposal, by the town board or somebody else to change that language in the code, does not really change the level of review that ought to be done in order for the town board to be comfortable approving it. So all the concerns that you have absolutely should be stated to the planning board, either by you personally or argue among or discuss among your peers that it be part of your recommendation. In other words, the secret review that would be appropriate in order to have enough information to make the decision doesn't change because it's part of a existing application. So I actually think everything's really still on the table. In other words, your recommendation, the board's recommendation could be that you don't like the idea, that you don't think the restriction should be on there. And it could be that you don't think the town board should act because it hasn't gathered enough information, et cetera. So all those things are still on the table. And really what the board should focus on, and Bruce has put a number of issues on the table. Other board members obviously should do the same. What you should focus on is, what do you think of the change? What do you want to tell the town board about the proposal to make this change? And that's really where this is at.
In fairness, if I might just for a second, Joe, I have we have no issue, and we agree. Anything we try and do in those parcels, we have to come back and get fully studied at a future date. With respect to anything lacking in the secret review, which is continuing and ongoing, it's hard to imagine what the impact is of the removal of the use. We're not adding anything. There's nothing to study about what we're adding to the zoning code. We're taking something away. So I'm not quite sure what studies would be necessary or traffic studies would be necessary to take a look into whether or not you remove a use.
Right.
If you would add it back in later, we could have that conversation. But I just want to say, for the seeker's standpoint,
yeah,
I think we have covered what we need to cover.
I understand, and that's obviously it's a position I would expect you to take, and I'm not even saying it's wrong. I only wanted to express to Bruce that the level of review that would be appropriate doesn't really change because it's part of an individual application's processing. That's all.
We agree.
But I hear what
we agree on that. We agree on that.
Well, I have no problem with the application with regard to the school. I'm in favor of that. I'm only I don't. The area was zoned for a reason, the way it was zoned, and I personally, obviously, maybe nobody else agrees with this, but I personally don't think that anything should be removed in this situation. So my recommendation to the town would be, go ahead with the school, that the use that's perfect, but just eliminate and come back some other time with a zoning change with regard to those two parcels that you're interested, and then we can debate that as a separate issue. That's all I'm trying to say.
Oh, that's a good idea. As a separate issue. Instead of part of the application. I can go along with that.
Yeah, I'm not for the multiple dwelling or against it. I just want to be able to give it the analysis that we've done with the school. We've done a great job with the school. I think the school has done a great job with all its presentations. And I think that we should, I personally would recommend that the two things get separated. That's all.
I have no problem with that.
I
Anybody else?
think you make a very good point, Bruce. I think it should be separate, especially at this point in time.
Yeah,
Okay, that's three people.
But how does that affect the applicant's process now? Right,
And
so
If you
they
separate that,
wanna
it's
move
a
forward.
segmentation of the review.
What's
You
that?
Is that segmentation of the review?
No, it wouldn't have an issue with us. If you came forward with a recommendation that was positive as to the zone change, but negative as to the piece where the removal of the multifamily came, that goes to the town board. It's your opinion, it's your recommendation and report. They're still gonna make the ultimate decision. So it doesn't,
Right.
we're looking for you to make a decision tonight
oh, yeah, I
and to
like
get it back to the town board. And if that's your position, they'll have to decide how they want to handle it. And that doesn't impact our application one way or the other.
Okay, okay. That-
Not
you
negatively.
solved it, you solved it. I think, I would go along with that.
Well, I'd like to hear from the rest of the board.
Yeah.
Please.
Dennis?
Vic?
So it doesn't result in a segmentation of the application and like a lack of continuity for you?
No,
Okay.
no.
If you have to separate them, go ahead, but I'm not feeling strongly about it.
What don't you feel strongly about, Dennis?
Having to separate it. Let the town board do what the town board wants to do. We're focused on expediting the approval of the school. Let's focus on that issue.
Right. I agree. We should focus on that issue. And we shouldn't be
Well,
focusing
why are we bringing up all these sidebars?
because the
Because
town,
the town made it part of the
the
change.
town made this difficult. They've added the difficulty. I agree. The school should go ahead with no problem. But,
And and we should do the subdivision.
right. And Dennis, they're asking us for our opinion. I understand that the town board has the ultimate decision. But as far as I'm concerned, my opinion is what they're asking for, at least I'm one of 7 that they're asking for, and I'm expressing them my opinion. That's all.
And you don't agree with the town board, and I don't feel one way or the other. Strongly,
Okay.
one way or the other.
Well, okay, I feel strongly, but anyway.
Yeah, I know that.
Sorry. Anybody else?
I'm all for separating it if it does not slow down the progress of the
Correct, if it doesn't slow it down,
as it-
right?
as it's been presented to us by the applicant. I personally agree with the town board. I think protection for multifamily residences in a size, lots of this size is a good measure at this point. This town is taxed, and I don't mean taxed, I mean strained already. Emergency services, fire, police, all of it. Heritage Hills is a very, very large community, comprises a good percentage of the residents of Somers. I think that it would be premature if we didn't put fail-safes to at least require an applicant who did want to build that to now go through the channels of rezoning, right? Because now we're taking it, flipping it, and then they would have to petition to zone it back. That would allow us a big debate now to discuss that. And that's why I am in agreement with what the town board did to ensure that we don't have, it's just one extra layer to prevent too much growth too quickly in a town whose infrastructure is already maybe not necessarily in sync, in my opinion, with the demands of the community. And that's but if us debating that as a separate issue does not slow down the process of the Bluestone Academy, then I think that let's separate it and debate it separately.
Well,
I agree.
I agree with Chris more than I do Bruce. Let's recommend they separate it.
Okay. That's all we can do.
I agree with Chris as well, and I think, and I've said it before that, as the attorney also said, that the division of the lots, the rezoning occasions, they're looking at the underlying zoning. It's perfectly appropriate to look at it now, because as soon as we divide it into pieces, then you have the opportunity for someone to come in and build housing on it. So I think it's appropriate, and let's move it to the town so they can discuss it in depth and separate them.
So I guess we've heard from everyone on the board. Gene, do you want to weigh in, Gene?
Where's Gene?
All right. I guess, Saret, do you want to kind of summarize the comments, and we'll put it in a letter to the town board? Are they looking for a motion here?
Well, yeah, I think you would make a motion, and then I would take that, as I often do, and put it in some kind of language and pass it around, and you will all comment on it.
Okay.
And however that gets revised, it will go on as your recommendation to the town board.
I'll make a motion that that you summarize a letter to the town board based on our comments this evening at the meeting. Circulate back to the board, and we can all sign off on it.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, going along, we have a referral of September 5th, the town board, or actually, what it is, it's a proposed comprehensive plan update on amendments to the new private school in Somers.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, Soretta, you gonna do that one?
Yeah, I'll do this one.
Go ahead.
As part of
Go ahead.
the changes to the OB 100 and basically allowing the school to be part of the special exception uses there need to be appropriate changes within the updated town comprehensive plan. And the pages that I went through, I made the minor modifications that are necessary. One of the things at the time that we did the amendments or the amended comprehensive plan, Pepsi was vacated at the time, and IBM had not officially been vacated at the time. So a lot of this relates to what the future of IBM would be now that this is a use that is being contemplated for it. So it's really not a major thing, but in different places, you can see on all these different pages, both in the narrative and in the policies, there are minor modifications that the town board needs to act on in order to make these changes to the zoning, because zoning has to be in compliance with a comprehensive plan, and therefore, by making these changes, when it makes the changes to the zoning to permit the school, it will be in conjunction with these changes in the comprehensive plan. Town board needs to have 2 public hearings in order to enact this and pass it by the county planning board and get back a vote from the county planning board as part of this overall process. So that's really what you're here to do tonight, is to identify that you've seen these changes and that you basically are in agreement with making the changes necessary to accommodate the school on this property.
I don't know if I can make a motion that long, but my general gist is,
Okay.
I would definitely go along with what you said and make a motion to the town board for that.
Yeah, to making a motion to, just make sure I understand this. We would make a motion to update the town's comprehensive plan? Is that?
Recommend.
To amend, to permit, to include the adaptive reuse of the IBM site for a private secondary school.
Can I ask council, is any, and I'm trying to bring it up on my screen and I just, for some reason it's locked. So I just want to ask, is any aspect of what's proposed as a change in the comprehensive plan related specifically to the hoped for change by the town board on the question of the multifamily?
Yes.
No, I'm looking.
I mentioned it. It's included in.
Well,
Right.
I want to see if there's anything.
So I think I can actually cut to the chase on this because there does seem to be a consensus of the board on both the issues that I want to bring up. And that is, I think, similar to what you did on the last item. It sounds to me like the consensus would be that you would recommend the amendment to the comprehensive plan to the extent that it makes the changes necessary to allow the school, but that you would not recommend that they adopt at this time the change that that
The code, that they do that separately.
right, exactly. So I think you just have to kind of be consistent in that regard, or at least I would say suggest that you do, but give them the recommendation, the positive recommendation that it sounds like you are inclined to give them, and that they'd like on the school itself to change.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly right, Joe.
I also just scanned the pages that I made the recommendations on, and they do not at all mention a zone change that eliminates multifamily.
Oh.
Good.
It only relates to permitting the school as an adaptive reuse on the site.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the language in the
I'll
comprehensive.
second it. And I'll second it.
Sorry, John.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Chris.
Sorry.
Okay. And last on our agenda.
Great, thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Okay,
Good night.
take care. Good night. Stay safe.
You too.
Last on ours is the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals role in this tower locator applications. We're in receipt of 3 letters from our town planner, from our town attorney, and also from resident Chris Foley. Saret, why don't you just give a little brief explanation of this, please?
Okay, Chris sent 2 letters, one a year ago and one more recently in January, stating that 2 of the cell towers that were approved by the board were supposed to give a lot of coverage in an area, and they have not, and that was one of the particular reasons that they were approved. And he was saying that as part of any of the extensions that the board needs to give for permits should take into consideration why these have not solved these gaps in service, in a nutshell. What that raises, however, was this big question that has come up in the past as to who the approval bodies are for extensions. Over the last several years, based on discussions with Roland Baroni, the way we were proceeding was a division of whether or not the planning board or the zoning board would act on requested extensions of permits, those 5-year required extensions. And the way we had decided at the time was that if they were originally approved by the zoning board, they would go back to the zoning board. If they were approved as part of the new legislation that enacted the planning board as the approval body, then their renewals would come back to the planning board. That has now come up for reconsideration, and you can see from the email that I got from Roland that he believes there are 2 ways that this can be resolved. Mainly that there should be discussion by the planning board and the zoning board as to what their positions are as to who should be the body that deals with all of these renewals. And my screen just did something weird, but we'll see what that's all about. And am I still on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And that those 2 things are that the 2 boards consult with each other, that you make your recommendation. I know that it's going to be on the zoning board's next meeting for their discussion as to what they think should happen. And if you both have an agreement, then according to Roland, we don't have to do anything else. And if the ZBA is going to still stay involved as part of these, then there needs to be some amendment to the zoning as it exists. So you need to decide, do you want them to still be involved? Do you want to take all the renewals? We have had a lot of discussions at this board that the renewals need to happen not just for the co-locators, but they also need to happen for the towers themselves. And in most cases, there are 2 different entities. The co-locators are the providers that we all know, for our cell phones, T-Mobile, Verizon, et cetera, AT&T, and that the towers are owned by Insight or Crown Castle, et cetera, and that on the ones that you have dealt with, you have wanted renewals for both of those things. So it's now for the board to discuss, decide how they feel they want to proceed in the future, see what the zoning board comes up with, and see if you both agree, and then we'll know how to proceed. Is Chris involved right now? Is Chris on the line somewhere?
No.
Oh, I don't know. Chris and Vicky somehow are not online, I think.
Well, he's not part
No,
of.
I think she means Chris Foley.
Chris Foley. Let me
Oh.
see. Barbara, are you still there?
Bruce, I'm here. Vicky's here.
Yeah,
Okay.
Barbara Sherry there.
We just don't have Chris Foley on the line.
I'm just wondering if Barbara Sherry is still with us.
Yes, I am.
Yes, she's
Okay, do you have anything
Yes.
from Chris?
No.
Okay, and I don't have,
What? Wait a minute, say what?
do you have anything from Chris Foley?
Nothing new.
No, did you get a call or a
No.
text?
No, I did not.
Okay, Paul, do you have a call from Chris Foley?
No, I do not.
Okay, and I don't have a text. Okay, so Chris is still not part of this conversation. Foley. Anyway, so it's up to the board to see how they want to handle this. Just so you know, I have 2 new emails related to the applications for renewals at Somerstown Shopping Center and Somers Commons that Denise forwarded to me to ask me, is the zoning board going to do this or is the planning board going to do this? That was today. And I said to her, let's wait until we see what the discussion is based on the planning board and zoning board.
Brett, I'm looking at Chris's letterhead. Do you want me to call his number and see if he picks up?
Sure.
Okay. I'll mute while I call him.
I just let
Well, she's
just-
doing that, Joe and Surat, I mean, what are your feelings? Or have you not thought about it?
You know, from the things that I saw today, let's say these would have gone to the zoning board because they were already renewed in the past by the zoning board. They were flagpoles. And Joe, maybe you need to, Joe Barbagallo, need to comment on this. They did have all of the reports. New York State engineer, they did the on-site inspection, they did the report based on whether or not they meet the federal emissions guidelines, et
Please,
cetera.
Brett, Chris says he's on hold. Paul, can you let Chris into the meeting?
Yeah, I'm looking. I don't see that he's on hold right now. I do not. Can you
Yes.
try again, please? Is he trying to call in or
Try
video?
again, please. Try again. Okay. I'm gonna hang up now. All right, bye.
Did Chris happen to say if he's calling in via phone or computer?
I don't know. You know, he must have been on the calling him via the phone because he dumped the hold to pick up my calls. So he's gonna try to call in again. Okay.
All right, no problem. I'll look out for him.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry, Saret.
So anyway, now this was for T-Mobile, and T-Mobile's facilities are within the flagpole. And they took all kinds of pictures and they said everything was good. And it's a little confusing because they then state they can't talk about the actual co-locator because it is within the flagpole. So it appeared that a lot of their discussion related to the quality of the flagpole. Do you know what I'm saying, Joe?
Yeah.
So it's in this case for the flagpoles where the co-locators are not on extensions outside. They did all the reports. So to go back to, these were Crown Castle poles. So then to go back to Crown Castle and say, okay, Crown Castle, you have to go do an on-site inspection of your pole seemed redundant to me. But I didn't have to deal with that yet today, but I'm reading these things, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Can I?
Well, let me ask Joe first. Joe, what's your opinion on that?
So, yeah, I mean, a co-locator, the person who should be doing all the structural analysis really should be the pole owner, right? Now, for certain types of equipment, if that equipment is going to change and be different.
Not change. These
just
were all
putting that burden.
not change. These were all exactly the same, just extensions.
Right. So, you know, under that circumstance, I think as long as we have a structural report, we're in good shape, right? And, you know, but it just, to me, I think our whole process around cell towers, which I'm sure is going to get more complicated as 5G comes through.
Absolutely.
I would like to see us, it would be best if everything was coincident, meaning the pole and everything on it was at least expired at the same time. So
That's what I recommended at the last meeting.
Right.
These things have got to come together. The
So I actually think
users and the pole owner and a user.
I'm in. Hi, Chris Foley's on.
Hi, Chris. All right, we started the discussion.
You know, but
Yeah, no, I've been listening. I've just been on hold.
John Curry's question, you know, what do I think about which board should look at this? I actually think that the planning board has better resources to.
Right.
Agreed.
Great.
You've got me, you've got Saret, you've got a lawyer. You know, I think that the zoning board is really just supported by our building inspector. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
No, they have a lawyer as well on certain items.
A lawyer. Now, don't get me wrong, our building inspector is fantastic, and I'm sure that you know, but of course I'm biased as an engineer that there are times when that adds value to these conversations.
All right, I think probably we will get back a recommendation from the zoning board that they'd be happy to give it to the planning board because apparently there was some discussions by the ZBA, but you know, the planning board has to decide and, you know, you make your decision. Let's see what the zoning board comes up with. And if that is the case, then we'll have to tell some of the lawyers who are very happy to go to the zoning board because it is a quicker process than coming to the planning board. And Joe Ariel, do you hear me now?
I do, and yeah, and
There will be a little discussion, I am sure, more than a little, with some.
there will be
of the
some
applicants.
wailing and gnashing of teeth, but I want to say this. There's a reason, I suspect, why your current code would have them be approved and therefore come back to the planning board. And some of those reasons are exactly the reasons that Joe Barbagallo just articulated. And I have to say, like, look, as counsel, I try to stick to legal advice and let you guys do the policy, right? But really, even from a strictly legal perspective, these are planning applications.
Right.
And I just, so look, again, I try rarely to weigh in on where you should fall, but I think it's an opportunity to normalize the process, bring everything into line consistently, and ensure that some of these issues that you guys are concerned about are actually getting the attention that they deserve. That's just how and as far as the fact that it may lengthen a process, look, all of us are very familiar with the extent to which the federal government has intervened to make sure that all these folks get in and out of all our boards pretty quickly. Yep. So I get it. I suppose I'd want to go to the ZBA if I was them too. And, but it's not the point either. So that's my legal advice, I think.
Can I add something to this? I came from the zoning board, okay? I think what Joe made the statement, they do not have the expertise. As nice, as qualified as they are to do the things they're doing, they don't have the expertise that the planning board has. And I agree that this should be a total issue with the planning board, and we should cover the thing soup to nuts, renewals and everything. So I agree with both of you guys.
I think they went to the zoning board initially when towers were proposed on residential building lots. And that was not a permitted use in a residential zone. So they went to the zoning board.
Yeah,
The planning board has jurisdiction over the building lot and the access roads and everything else. It belongs, in my opinion, with the planning board.
I think it started with the tower on the Amato farm, right? They needed a variance because that was an agricultural site.
Yeah.
They wanted to put a cell tower there, and
well,
I think that's kind of how the ZBA got involved in it.
The ZBA got involved because in the beginning, you went to the zoning board to get a special exception use permit for the pole. In the beginning, that's how it was done.
Yes.
And the renewal problems surfaced because then we took it over. But the problem arose when the original special exception use permit issued by the ZBA came up for renewal. And instead of coming to us, it went to them.
How do we get it to come to the planning board? And how do we get it linked where the tower owner and the users all expire on the same date?
Well, if you decide that all of them are going to come to you and the ZBA agrees, then once that happens, we will determine how we will do that. But I know that there are now 2 applications that you're going to get very soon if you are the ones that are going to be dealing with this.
And legally, can we shorten that 5-year renewal to a midterm where it would then coincide with the tower owner? Or vice
Well,
versa?
I have to say, a lot of these towers may not even have been separately renewed. So if we're starting, we may be able to start them right at the same time, but that remains to be seen.
But Dennis, we have done that before. We've had a shortened extension period. I forget which tower it was on to make those coincide.
Yeah, we did do that. I recall that with, I forgot the fellow that was here, Alexander.
Let's make it a practice.
Yeah, I mean, the precedent set, I guess we can do that now with all of our renewals.
If it's not illegal, let's do it.
No, you did it already. I recall. It was Neil Alexander who was before you.
I want to say it was the towers behind Summer Sport and Fitness, I think.
Yeah. And
Yes,
Neil
I think you're
Alexander
right.
was representative.
Majestec.
Yes.
Majestec was it.
Majestec, yeah.
Yes.
Let's vote.
Well, I think if I'm hearing everybody correctly, sounds like we're unanimous in this.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes,
So
that's
depending on what
hear it?
happens with the zoning board meeting,
Before we vote, can we ask Mr. Foley to just comment? I mean, he is the genesis of this debate, and I want to make sure that we're in sync with what it is that his concerns were regarding this.
Are you
Certainly.
there?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
yes.
Good evening, all. Chris Foley by cell phone here. So I've been listening, including for a while before I got on. It's certainly fine that you are debating whether, it should be the planning board or the ZBA. But for me, the entire issue begins and ends with the code. The code is very clear. It's a planning board step, not the ZBA. So, it's great if it's a matter of comity, the COMITY, if you want to try to iron it out with the ZBA. But if the ZBA says it's theirs and the planning board says it's theirs, the town code is what controls, and the town code says it's the planning board.
Okay.
So, certainly if you want to reach out, great, but unless the town board is going to alter that arrangement, it is your responsibility. It's not the ZBA's, notwithstanding what may have occurred in the past.
Right. All right. Well, I mean, that sounds like that's in sync with the trajectory that we're taking now, that we want to assume control of this. We probably never should have lost it, but we want to make sure that it's.
But the only way we're going to get the answer from the users is to put them together with the owners and have them all before us at the same time to answer the question scientifically about why there's a gap in service.
Correct.
Yeah, I guess that's first and foremost for the particular cell phone company to address as opposed to the cell tower owner. But I certainly agree. It would be better to have it on a coordinated renewal schedule so you get them all before you. I don't know that can be done, but that's up to you.
That's what I've been trying to do.
Yes.
But,
Good idea.
but Chris, your big concerns are about Route 35 and the combination of Amato and Santaroni, correct? And not basically delivering on the coverage they promised.
Yeah, my concerns were specifically in reference to those 2 towers, which went up not long into my planning board career, based upon promises of, among other things, good service by AT&T, which was one of the co-applicants at the time, or whatever it was called, AT&T Wireless. That's what we were told. We did the whole analysis.
It was singular.
They said this will get it done, and it just hasn't.
I can attest to that. I live at about 2,000 feet from the Amato cell tower. And in order to have AT&T coverage in my house, I have to have a little mini cell tower in my basement that now turns my cellular into a VoIP. So I can tell you, Mr. Foley, when AT&T comes in front of us, I'm going to ask that question why my cell phone doesn't work.
Can I ask a question with regard, are the towers that you're talking about the flagpole type?
Well, no.
They're both, they're tree towers,
No,
you know.
No,
They're not.
yeah, neither one of them. No.
no, they're the pines. They look like the trees. A mono
Okay.
farm is not a monopine. It's got the outside antennas, and Santaroni also has done the style of a tree with outside antennas.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're gigantic trees.
All right, so we heard from Mr. Foley, right, John? I think we should,
Yes, thank you very much, Chris. I think we're
Thank
all in
you all.
agreement,
Thank
and hopefully this will get resolved at the zoning board meeting. I believe it's the 21st of this month. And maybe they'll pass it all over to,
And thank you, Chris, for raising the issue.
I'm
You're
not
very
sure
welcome.
that, I'm not sure that the zoning board is having a meeting this month.
well, I know they just did a practice Zoom, so I'm assuming they are.
Yeah, they
Oh,
are.
okay, because I
Yes,
talked
they
to
are.
one of,
It's Tuesday.
okay, because I talked to one of the zoning board people.
Yeah.
He said they weren't having one, but he may be wrong. Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess we don't need a note. We'll just see what happens after the zoning board meeting at this point. Does anyone else have anything they want to add or any comments?
I guess what I'll do is I will write a memo to the zoning board from the planning board and pass it on to Denise so that they're clear
Okay.
that that the planning board wants to take this on and believes that based on zoning, that it is your responsibility to take it on.
Fine.
Yes.
Before we adjourn, our next scheduled meeting is on May 13th, but I want to thank Paul for all his help with this, setting this up, the trial runs, and guiding a person like me who still has a rotary phone in the basement. Thank you for helping me.
Yeah,
No
nice
problem.
job, Paul.
Appreciate it, guys.
Great,
Thanks.
Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Paul,
And
thank you.
to everyone that's on here, stay safe, be careful. It'll get better. My guess is that we're going to be doing this again in May. So
You're
everybody be careful and stay safe.
Well, this is good.
Motion
because
to
you don't-
adjourn.
second,
Hooray.
Okay.
this was a long one.
Be well.
Yeah, it
Yes.
was.
Thank you.
Not like we got to drive home now either.
No,